Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the St. Louis Rapid and BLitz. My name is Firouzja, and I'm delighted to be here tonight with International Master Alex Astane. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hope everybody is doing well, and hope it's a fun day of chess. And of course, that goes well for Hikaru. He's got a tough lineup.
Today is a big day. Hikaru will be feeling good coming off his last win of the day yesterday against Fabiano, which helped him get back to 50%. Today he's starting, let me flip. Oh, you guys can't see the board yet. Anyway, he's starting with the black pieces against Alireza. You can see the standings under our cameras right now. So MVL is currently in the lead with 5 points. Remember, during the rapid portion, points count double. And Hikaru is currently sharing 5th place together with his opponent of in just 5 minutes, Alireza, and with Nordibek. Alex, what do you expect from this matchup against Alireza?
Well, I mean, as Hikaru, one of the things about him is he's very transparent about his opinions of players and of the quality of their play. And Alireza is one of those players who maybe some people think he hasn't quite lived up to the potential he showed a few years ago, but he remains very much on Magnus and Hikaru's radar. Hikaru, I know, recently said in the context of the SEC that he considers Alireza to be one of the very few guys who can hang with him across the more quick fire time controls like Bullet. But you would have to imagine that Hikaru will consider himself a slight favorite. Now that gets a little bit twisted by the fact that Alireza does have the white pieces. So is it a bit of a coin flip in your view?
Yeah, I mean, Hikaru famously beat Alireza twice at the candidates tournament this year, and they will be meeting very soon in Paris for the semi-finals of the SEC, which is going to be a very, very exciting matchup. We'll see plenty of games between those two here. This is probably the last time they will meet in a tournament setting before those semifinals in Paris in what, three weeks roughly from now. So yeah, as Chai Doc in the chat is saying, and hello chat, good to see you all. Time to assert dominance. We see Hikaru is already at the board. Remember, there is a 10-minute delay for the rapid portion. So the games have actually started already for us. They will start 3 minutes from now. And I'm also curious, what approach will Alireza take? Because in the candidates, he sort of went all out, especially towards the end of the tournament, not just against Hikaru, but in most of his games. Interesting question from Don Esperin. How many moves will Hikaru play? You mean across all 3 games or in this game? Because yesterday, we didn't really get a marathon game yesterday. So we'll see. I am going to predict that this game is going to end in under 40 moves.
I love how you're always game for these little challenges. It's like, I mean, it's a question that is just a complete guess. I mean, nobody has a time machine, but you're in,
Yeah, I'm in.
you're committed, you're invested, and you'll be monitoring the moves and hoping
How
it's
do you
under
feel
40.
about Clyde's comment? There he is, the big man, Alex.
Well, I appreciate it, Clyde. It's good to be back. Just for today, as somebody mentioned, as you'll see in the comment, Jose is traveling, and it's nice. It's always nice to join in and watch some games, especially. I don't know how the chat feels, but Rapid and Blitz and all of that. I think as a commentator, I have to say it's more fun.
fun.
Yeah, no, I have to say, yeah.
Oh, how many? He meant only this game. Well, I'm gonna predict 36 moves. What's your prediction, Alex?
Gonna have to go with, I'm gonna say a long one, 53.
53.
53 moves.
Okay.
I know you love odd numbers.
Yeah, I hate them. Get your predictions in the chat. Probably the most random prediction we've ever had. There we see the handshake as Alireza is arriving to the game. Hikaru has been busy. He made not only the recap he was on about during the interview last night of Levy's game, he also recapped yesterday's action. But now day 2 is ready They are ready to start. 1 minute to go. I missed the Hikaru smile. They're looking very serious right now. A bit perplexed what is going on. Maybe some speech, probably. And yeah, what do you think? Will Alireza, in the candidates he opened with e4, right? I think, and it was some kind of weird with this early c5 again. With an early d5, c5. If only I remembered openings. I don't know why I got us into this, but I'm gonna predict Alireza will open with e4.
Oh, right on cue.
Here we go. And we got a French. Hikaru hitting the Frenchman with the French. Hikaru showed some big prep yesterday. We saw it mostly, I think, in the first game, this e4, c5, f4. And the French, Alex, certainly a surprise. Not an opening Hikaru plays much, as far as I'm aware.
No, I mean, it's interesting about the French. For many years, I think it was considered to be not quite absolute top tier, so you didn't see it quite so often, but it feels to me like it's been making a little bit of a comeback. And one thing about Hikaru, I think, is what you were speaking about with this d5, c5 stuff, is he's generally not afraid to just to go into, he's not like one of those players who always meets, say, e4 with e5 and stays really solid. Maybe someone like Wesley So, or even to a lesser extent, someone like Magnus or Fabiano. He's willing to actually play a really broad range of openings and try and maybe come up with some fresh ideas and catch his opponent out. So I don't know that Alireza will have expected the French.
Yeah, and Queen b6, the first move that sends the Frenchman into the tank. We did briefly check the openings tab. There are still plenty of games played here. And Alireza has just decided to respond with a3, which is the main response. So we get another quick move by Hikaru, knight h6. And Alex, what's that about? Already yesterday, when I was here with Jose, we saw some kind of play. I think it's so tough, right? Because there are many beginners. I'm sure many of you watching us are beginners, maybe club level players. And so often these top players do things which we are taught, do not develop the knight to the edge. I don't get the queen out too early. What is knight h6 about?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, the move a3 is the main line, because basically when black steps the queen here to b6 and puts a bunch of pressure on this pawn, white faces a problem in that there is pressure against the pawn on d4, but also pressure against b2. And so what happens is, let's say this knight finally reaches the f5 square. It's going to add to that piece pressure on the pawn on d4.
Strong arrow game, by the way.
Thank you. And white would like to play bishop e3 potentially, just to really support that center. But if you ever go bishop e3, there's this problem on b2. So white's idea with a3 is to follow up with b4 and finally sort of force black to a decision here. And say you go b4 and this gets exchanged, this bishop sometimes actually goes to b2 in order to defend the pawn, depending on how black plays. So really the a3 move looks very strange, but the idea is actually a fight for the center and a fight for what's called pawn tension. These two pawns are looking at each other in the face, and white doesn't want to take because that would open up the bishop. And as for this move, knight h6, the idea is that black wants to put the knight on on f5, and black is not worried about bishop takes.
Yeah, let's see that actually. So I think the main question would be, yeah.
So black is not worried about bishop takes h6 here. For starters, there's this tactical idea of queen takes b2, hitting the rook, and the bishop is still hanging. So that's a very concrete problem. And even if this problem wasn't there and black could only play a move like pawn takes h6, this is not as bad as it looks. It's around equal because black has what's called the bishop pair and maybe a semi-open file here. Black is hoping that these things are going to make up for the damaged pawn structure. This is I think what's going on, but we haven't seen any of this, and Alireza actually plays bishop to d3, ignoring. And there's a trick here, which is, Hikaru has just played pawn takes pawn, and if white has actually castled, but if white had taken here, you do not take everything because
you can make the moves, but there is a life board.
So if you take here, you never take this pawn. This is one of the most common beginner traps. that we learn usually through brutal experience in the early days.
I discovered check.
And this discovered checks. So there was, but nevertheless, the game continued with castle. And Alireza is saying, if you want, you can take a second pawn here. But if you do this, look at my piece development. You know, your king is still pretty far away from being castled. So Nakamura plays the move bishop to d7. And now, and only now, does Alireza play b4.
Okay, so this looks actually was a good question in the chat. How much time did they start with? We forgot to mention the time control. They start with 25 minutes and they get a 10-second increment per move. So the time can sometimes you can build up a little bit. There's also a 10-minute delay, but that's irrelevant for us right now anyway. And b4, Alex, once again, the pawn on c3 could be captured, but I guess you still don't want to do that.
I think
The problems remain the same.
I agree. And I think now there's even less of an incentive for black, because let's say that you played some move like bishop to e7 and white went ahead and captured. Now it's a little bit different. Black could take this pawn, because remember, that tactical idea of takes and bishop b5 check is no longer possible. So Hikaru...
I'm sorry, I looked at the chat.
What happened?
Big mistake. I saw Chidok's comment.
Chidog's comment.
Third last. 25 minutes 10.
They always get you.
These terrible jokes, especially if there is any, you know, childish, any pooing, peeing, they always get me. Anyway, back to the game.
Now you guys know.
Rook c8. Now you know how to make me laugh. Hikaru hasn't spent much time. Do you think this could still be his prep?
Yeah, if I had to guess so, I would say so. Let's see actually have how many games. So only 18 games in the database have reached this position. So it's pretty rare. You know, we were in the tens of thousands of games not so long ago.
Did we're off the beaten?
I think it's this sacrifice maybe here,
yeah.
with bishop to d3 from no, I think in this position here. Most of the time white goes b4 and sort of forces black to play like this, but and keeps the pawn. But Alireza came to fight. He plays bishop d3, offers up the pawn, and Hikaru declines it, and that takes us to the position we're at right now.
So this tension remains between the two pawns. Is it kind of like both sides wait for the other player to take first and none of them wants to really take the other? The question is for white, how do you wait? Because this knight surely has to stay on b1 to keep an eye on the pawn. What about this bishop?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that keeping the bishop here makes some sense in the sense that it is pressing the knight. And so right now, it's not such a big deal if white captures here, because black hasn't castled. But long term, where is Hikaru's king going to go? I mean, I don't think it's going to stay in the center forever. So Hikaru probably is thinking in some spots to go bishop e7 and castle. But if you do this and Alireza still has the bishop here, he might choose that moment to chop the knight. And then it's not about the damaged pawns, it's about the safety of your king. So there is, in my opinion, some interest in keeping the bishop here. And it's maybe no surprise that the computer is suggesting very unusual moves like h3 or rook a2. But I think what Alireza plays b5 is kind of a testament to what you're saying, which is it's hard to find a good move. You know, if the computer is saying h3 or rook a2, these are difficult moves for a human to even think about. So Alireza goes for something more concrete and hits the knight on c6.
b5, the first move that the computer... Yeah, I see the blunder alerts. I was waiting. Eris is the first to get it in. The bar has swung ever so slightly in black's favor. Is that because white is kind of overexpanding, or... I mean, you just released yesterday, Alex, a course on positional chess. Is that a little outpost?
It's a juicy outpost. It's a juicy outpost for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, positional chess is kind of concerned about picking up these little advantages that are quite powerful because they stick around for a long time. And so what you're mentioning, Fiona, is that suddenly this square, which was already an outpost, meaning it's controlled by a black pawn, but cannot be controlled by a white pawn. Now this move b5 invites the response knight a5, and suddenly the knight has a path to get to this very juicy square. It could be the first piece that lands into Alireza's half of the board. So definitely the move knight a5 seems like the natural response, but it's interesting that for now Hikaru is still considering his options.
Yeah, I wonder what else he could be thinking about. I guess the only alternative really is to go to e7 and I up f5.
Yeah, maybe he wants to bring this knight to f5 and have this one supporting. But if you go this route, question is, how are you going to develop this bishop? There's also maybe some strange plan to reroute the knight to g6, but I have to feel that Hikaru will go for maybe the more classical, typical response.
Yeah, I was looking at the camera and Hikaru looks a little bit perplexed by this b5 push. He was reaching out to make a move. And he does go back to e7. Okay, now that's a not so surprising. As you said, the knight has other squares. It's eyeing up from e7, like f5, g6. I did feel knight a5 was the natural move, even if it looked funny, right, to be playing with both knights on the edge. But knight e7 means that he's eyeing up the king side.
Yeah, but I think no matter which direction the knight has gone in so far, I think the direction of the game is pretty good for Hikaru. I'm sure he's quite happy here. He has a game. It's not clear if white or black is even better. It's maybe around equal, as the computer suggests. But, you know, I think from a human perspective, it's nice that Hikaru has pressure against this pawn, pressure here on the open file. And, you know, if he manages to maybe finish his kingside development in castle, it's a big question is, you know, how is Alireza going to put him under pressure?
Yeah, I mean, that's I'm looking at white's position. If I'm white, I don't like being a pawn down. So I would think now, I would want to recapture on d4, but I would be wondering, do I want to take with the pawn? I think that would be my instinct. The computer says knight takes, but to me, I don't know. I would, if I were white, I would feel a little bit worried about this pawn on c3. What could be the drawback of taking with the pawn?
Well, I think it's
Oh,
yeah, it's the danger that this pawn can be captured.
yeah.
I wonder if this is what is on Hikaru's mind, or perhaps the reason why Alireza is thinking so much here is just because he's concerned that if he doesn't take with the knight, he's going to lose a pawn.
And chat, I noticed the alerts because the chat and the bar did not approve of Hikaru's last move, knight e5. The computer wanted knight f5, but it wanted this knight, which again looks more natural, like to get this knight away from the edge. But on the other hand, the knight on e7 is blocking the bishop. So let's look at this move, which was played in the game. Now, Alireza immediately plays the correct response, I think, and just consolidates the pawn on b5.
So what is the difference between having gone with this? So can I go back? So let's say that we had gone here, a4. Now let's say knight takes d4 and a5. You get this position, and what the computer is saying is that here, since the knight is anyway going to be lost, and you can't go queen c5 because there's this move bishop a3 that drives your queen back, and then white will capture. So since the knight is going to be lost, the computer says, let me just throw it away with a check so that white keeps this not so good pawn, and then go queen c7, and I have a lot of pressure, and the computer says this is equal. But the question that I have, and maybe a lot of people have, is what happens if in the game, this is the position, if black just goes ahead and does the same thing. Knight here, queen takes f3 and queen c7. Why is this knight being on e7 equal, but with the knight on h6, it's apparently very good for white? that doesn't, even seeing it here with the computer, even with the help, it doesn't seem obvious.
No, not at all.
One thing that I can think it could be is that if the bishop goes to f4, the knight is stuck because you can never put it to f5 because takes, and e6 hitting the queen. So it could be something very subtle like this. The knight gets stuck, and if you have to do something like, say, bishop e7, rook e1, and castle, this is very dangerous with this stuck knight. For instance, queen e3 hits the knight, and what are you going to actually do? And your king becomes a little bit unsafe. So I guess we should go back to the game itself and see what has happened. But after knight f5, a4, yeah, Hikaru all of a sudden has some pretty tricky questions or tricky problems to solve.
Is there a concrete threat already that white has? So let's say I play something like bishop e7, just try and complete my development. Okay, it looks like there's no concrete threat. So do you think the fact that the computer dislikes the position quite a bit for black is all to do with this knight that's a little bit stuck on the edge?
I would say it's a mix of those knights and the fact that Alireza has grabbed a lot more space here. So he has those dangerous looking pawns on the queen side all of a sudden. The pawn on e5 is a bit of a thorn in the side. And he is already the side that is castled. So I think none of these factors on their own are such a big deal. But I think when you put them all together, maybe it's starting to be a little bit uncomfortable. But if there's one player, maybe in the entire world, who is very comfortable with this kind of slight pressure, it's Nakamura. I mean, I think Hikaru, I don't know why I call him Nakamura. Anyway, Hikaru is, he's well known to be just an amazing defender. So I don't think he's probably not too stressed here, but yeah.
There's a question in the chat from Ares. Can we play bishop c5? Which also makes sense to me, to increase the pressure on this central point. That knight is going to have to either be defended or move. If you defend it, I guess bishop e2.
Yeah, but at least then maybe the bishop is no longer hounding this knight on h6. Maybe that actually is a nice, I like the idea. And I think probably this is where Hikaru is burning his time, whether to put the bishop on e7, maybe a little bit more solid, or a little bit, or the more aggressive setup here on c5.
And Gyrosk, we're in Ireland, in lovely Ireland. And Don Aspirin is saying, maybe you guys should use your supercomputer. Alex, just fire up your supercomputer and we'll continue with
I recently bought a supercomputer waiting for this moment. So the time has come.
Let's go back to the live position. Hikaru, this is his first, I would say, very long thing of the game. He has, let's face it, he has some problems to solve. Can you ever consider taking here?
So this is the concern.
This is the problem. Oh, we saw this, yeah.
It's very clever, actually, from Alireza. It has to be said.
Yeah.
You know, he's...
I'm just remembering the old lines. Okay, back to the drawing board. Also, what about the king? It's funny because Jose and I talked about the French yesterday, and
what about him?
Was it actually? Who even played the French yesterday? What was the second game? Hikaru actually, I think, played the French just yesterday. If I'm not, guys, remind me. Did Hikaru play the French against? No, he didn't against. But they were French-like structures. I think that's what's good. No, it was a game against MVL, which turned into a French-like structure. And Jose was making the point that in the French, at least you get you have clear plans as black. But here it's not so straightforward. One of the plans that Jose talked about is playing f6, which here is not really an option with the king still in the center and e6 becoming so weak. So that leads me to wonder what is going to happen with that king. Is the king gonna go to f8? Is it gonna castle? What do you think?
I think that black will try to castle. I think that sooner or later, you know, white is going to something is going to get resolved, right? Maybe it's going to be an exchange here on d4. Maybe the bishop is going to commit away from the pressure on the knight. And I think Hikaru's just going to time castling as well as possible. And I don't think it's such a big deal. In the French, you often play f6, but usually f6 is really necessary when there's a pawn here on d4.
Yeah.
Without the pawn, this pawn on e5 is a little bit more shaky. So black can at some point try to hound it without needing the help of this pawn break. So I think the other thing as well is that Hikaru's pieces are not so badly placed. Maybe the bishop is a little bit passive, but maybe this is going to be the pawn break. What Hikaru is going to want to do is just make sure all of his pieces come alive. And so I think, yeah, bishop e7, castle, maybe try to get double up the rooks here on the c file and try and generate counterplay that way.
Cernel or Kernel is willing Hikaru to please find it. The thing is, there is no it, right? There is nothing to find. There are a couple of moves, I would say, bishop e7, bishop c5. Like it's not a position where you're gonna be lost unless you find the correct move. I think he just needs to come up with a plan, decide what are his next few moves going to be. I still think bishop e7. Oh, but he is reaching. I think he's going to take on d4 from the reaching, my buddy reaching language reading.
Do you feel that after so much time doing commentary for Hikaru that
What did I say?
There you go. Do you feel like your understanding of the move he's about to play based on his body language, do you think this has gone up? Still?
I think it's more like just understanding, not so much Hikaru, but in general, when someone reaches more or less in the center of the board, it's unlikely they are going to play bishop e7. So knight takes d4 has been played, and if Alireza does anything other than a5, we'll be happy. But he did just play e4 on the last move, which could have other. Do you think a5? It's not that hard to find, surely.
No, for a player, for any of the players in this tournament, a5, I think, is the move we can expect most of. Maybe and hopefully Alireza goes a little bit wrong, because the alternatives like this capture is very bad, because then black can just go up a pawn, and the move bishop e3 is around equal. So that would immediately anything other than a5, and Hikaru is has avoided all the danger. So we're definitely happy that Alireza hasn't snap played the move a5.
Let's take a look at the line of what happens after a5.
So after a5, the problem is that the black queen would love to stick around defending this knight with the move queen c5, but the problem is bishop a3. And now the queen is pushed back to, let's say, c7. And now, for example, if white wants, they can even he can even exchange the bishops. And let's say that you got a position like this. This would be quite comfortable for white, because suddenly it's what you were saying, Fiona, that the king ends up unable to castle. It's on f8. It's not a great square. The knight is a bit awkward here. And the queen being on the open file, that could potentially backfire if white can land a rook on the c file. So with less space and kind of a clumsier king and clumsier pieces, definitely there would be a few problems to solve here for black.
It's not the end of the world, but it's not a pleasant position. I keep looking at this knight. I was thinking, where do I want this knight to be? And I was like, I do something like this.
Yeah, no, I think what Hikaru would need to do is just go to f5 and accept that if white wants to exchange here, Hikaru would have an isolated pawn and doubled pawns. But on the other hand, it's maybe quite solid, right? Maybe at some point you put your bishop on e6, you stay solid, you try to find some safety for your king. It's a little bit ugly of a position, but it's not the end of the world, like you say.
Yeah, and Alireza is still thinking, which is good. No, he has played a5, as I said. A5 is on the board, which means we're gonna have to strap in now. It's not gonna be a pleasant position. It's very far from Lost. But it's not gonna be fun. Do we have to go to c5? Yeah, so we're going down exactly the line we just looked at. The computer is again flashing up this knight f3 Zwischenzug in between move. What's the advantage? I know we discussed it before, but we thought in this line it wasn't such a big difference.
Yeah, I still think that, I mean, Hikaru hasn't immediately replied. So knight f3 is on the radar for him because if you don't see knight f3, this is the only alternative. Or knight e2. So he is actually going for this check. And the advantage is that it blocks white from being able to capture this way, leaving white with a vulnerable pawn and leaving this pawn a little bit weaker. So yeah, it makes sense that Hikaru is going for this. And perhaps even though the computer quite likes it for white, from a human perspective, maybe Hikaru feels this is not so bad because I have pressure against these two pawns. And I tend to agree. You know, we see the evaluation bar shooting up. It looks really, really dangerous. But, you know, I mean, imagine you had the white pieces here against Hikaru, right? You wouldn't be feeling so confident. There's a lot of life in this game.
And one thing that I'm curious about, I thought Alireza would probably just snap take on f8 here, but one of the moves suggested, well, actually the top move, at least according to the engine we see, is to drop the bishop back, which does surprise me. I thought I'd be happy as white to get the king uncastled. But are you here just saying, okay, I'm just gonna defend the bishop and then bring the knight out?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of two factors. One is what you just said, which is that the bishop here, by covering this pawn on c3, invites or allows white to develop his final undeveloped piece, this knight on b1. It has to get into the game, maybe some route like this. The other thing is that in general in chess, if you have more space like Alireza does, think of space kind of like a house, right? The more space you have, or the less space you have if you're Hikaru, the sort of the smaller the house for your pieces. So the more pieces that are kept on the board, the more you might struggle. So it's a bit of a deep move, and I think most humans just capture here so that black can't castle. But I think the idea is, yeah, defend the pawn and also try and punish black for having less space. I think that's what's going on.
And Alireza is still thinking about his decision.
I think he played bishop e2.
Oh,
as
he
far as,
did play, yeah, just played. Bishop e2 is on the board. I was looking at the Maxime shouts. I quickly checked the eval bar in the other games, but doesn't look like anything too dramatic is happening elsewhere. Okay, is it time to get this bishop out, or do you play knight f5?
I think Hikaru will probably feel he's always got knight f5 in the bag. So if I had to guess, I would say that black is going to develop the bishop either to e7 or to c5 and figure out what to do with the knight later on. I mean, if white just sits around and does nothing and black is given some time, I wouldn't rule out that move you were mentioning earlier, which is after castling to play f6.
Well, that's all on the board.
Yeah, we have up to what was knight d2 in castle? Yeah.
One other question I have is, okay, white doesn't have this pawn securing the pawn on e5 any longer. Does it make sense for white to push f4? And
I think that's dangerous because suddenly white's king gets opened up on this diagonal, and Hikaru can probably use that at some point, bishop c5 check, or moves like this. If you play f4 as well, this square becomes a bit of a target. So let's say bishop c5 and knight, the knight goes to f5 and then jumps to e3. And yeah, so what I was thinking is maybe Alireza is going to try to play on the queen side, because that pawn is the one we were saying. It's a weak pawn. And Alireza wants nothing to do with it. He just wants to trade it off for black's best pawn.
And Hikaru is probably not gonna have a choice but to capture. I mean, surely if you Okay, let me just make a pass move for the sake of showing this. I guess this is not a structure, even though the bishop, that dreaded French bishop, is finally open. I guess this pawn is just too much of a weakness. So yeah, Hikaru reaches that conclusion that he has no choice but to capture Alireza, recaptures with the bishop.
But I think Hikaru's not going to be too unhappy because now that the bishop's been driven away from this diagonal, maybe now it's finally an opportunity for Hikaru to bring the knight, his stranded knight, into the center of the board. And, you know, as anybody who's watched Hikaru's games, he's very, very slippery in these situations. And already the evaluation bar is less in White's favor than a couple of moves ago. And it wouldn't surprise me if Hikaru somehow takes the sting out of White's position over the coming moves. What do you think, Fiona?
The only thing that worries me is that, yeah, and the chat is gonna go wild. I was gonna say knight f5 was the top choice, but every other move was leading to a position where White gets a bigger advantage, which I'm not sure why. Rook fd8 looks natural to me. I still don't understand why the position is so bad. Like, I understand, we're very crammed, we don't have much space, but for it to be so bad, also, there is only one move here, which again is far from obvious to me. Only one move for Alireza to get this big advantage, which is already shrinking a little bit. The barrel race needs a bit of time to adjust. Rook f to c1.
Well, I think this move alone, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's let's say the only move in the position, but I think it's a reasonable candidate. But what is crazy is that after this move, to keep that big advantage, Alireza needs to find the move g4, which has this positional idea of blocking off the knight. But man, when you play a move like g4, you leave yourself with these weaknesses. Black is ready to jump in with a move like, say, bishop g5 and pinning the knight and rook. And I don't know about you, Fiona, but I mean, if I'm playing a game, I don't think I'm even thinking of this move g4. So I would be
not with your positional style.
I would be blown away if Alireza actually goes for this. It would really, really surprise me.
Well, let's see. Alireza is still thinking. Hikaru is getting up from the board for maybe the first time in this game. The players have down to half of the time they started with. I don't know. I feel like it is within the graphs. Within grasp of a player of Alireza's caliber, and he is such a dynamic player. But yeah, it is a very double-edged move. I mean, you do give up some squares. It does create a few weaknesses. So let's see. Rook fc1 is on the board.
Yeah.
Will we see the follow-up?
I still think, I mean, I really...
Kramnik's math teacher. How did Hikaru's knight get to h6? Like this. Did we? No move yet.
And you're just moving on, yeah? Next question. Next question to the chat.
Bring him on. Queen b8 played. Yeah, this is a big moment, I would say, actually, in the game. I think if Alireza finds g4, first, that'll be really impressive, but then I think Hikaru will be in for a lot of suffering. Every other move, as we mentioned, Hikaru is probably one of the best defenders, maybe the best defender in the world. Yeah, you were right. G4 maybe was too big an ask, and I think we can all breathe a bit of a sigh of relief to see knight f3 appear on the board. And is it finally time for knight f5?
Yeah, I think so. What else can Hikaru do? I mean, he's struggling a little bit with moves, you know? Maybe you could go for something like bishop to e8 to unlock the scope here of your rook, but I mean,
Surely you can play with
seems that,
this
yeah,
knight on the rim all
forever.
game long, yeah.
Yeah, sooner or later. And I don't see another route. I mean, black would have to move the king, drop it back to
And
G8,
then what?
and then what? Exactly. So that knight has to go. Now, one concern would be, okay, if I go knight f5, can it get hounded with a move like g4? And this isn't a concern because black would love to exchange a pair of knights. Less pieces make the lack of space less of a problem. But maybe the thing that really worries Hikaru is, let's say bishop to d3. Now the knight is under fire, and what do? Do you don't really want to move it back? If you try to exchange here, now it doesn't work because I take you, you take,
And the
and now
knight
we
has
need 4,
finally appeared.
and there is a lot of pressure. Okay, so I'll just go back. So knight f3 and knight f5 is on the board.
Finally, I am relieved. I mean, when did that knight appeared on h6 on move 6? It has been sitting there for 15 moves. It's now move 21. But it's out of there. And if you're white here, how do you continue if not with immediate attacking measures?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the move that seems the most natural is to ask this question of the knight. So just dropping the bishop back to d3, because the bishop here,
It's not clear what
it's
it's
not,
doing.
yeah, it's not doing so much. This was the best diagonal for it. And what happens here? I mean, I think at the very least, Alireza is going to like to constantly trouble Hikaru, you know, if and when white can capture. So you always have that tension that at any moment white can capture and land you in a lot of trouble. So I think bishop d3 makes sense. I don't know if you see some other interesting move.
No, well, I see the computer flash up h4, which I always find interesting. I'm especially curious because that pawn is just hanging.
Yeah.
So what happens if I take? Okay, this is too high a level for me. And what the point is just that you come in here and
to drive the bishop to this beautiful d6 square, and yeah,
it's a nice move, but
again seems maybe in classical.
I just wanted to come back to a question from the chat. Could Hikaru have taken the bishop with the rook? The problem is, if white were to take with the rook, then this would be lovely. We could take here with the skewer. That's not a very good arrow, but the problem is that Alireza could have recaptured with the queen, and then we don't really have a good follow-up. So unfortunately, that was not possible. And we now have this position on the board. Do we need to be worried about white taking, or do we need to worry about other things? Well,
I think depending on what black does, for sure, this move is always in the air, especially if you could time it, you know, depending on how things are. Let's say the knight is on d4, it goes to d4, and then maybe there's going to be this advance of the pawn. So I don't think that, you know, let's say Hikaru can just place a move like h6 and assume you're never going to face this possibility. Although at the same time, right now it's considered a bad idea, so maybe it's not as big of an immediate danger at all. Since here, black would actually not only get rid of his problem knight, but also have this square on e6 for the bishop, have the bishop pair. Suddenly, even though these pawns maybe not looking ideal, turns out actually that black would be quite happy with that trade. So it's a good question, and I don't think immediate capture is on the cards. But
the question still for Hikaru is, what do you do? This knight only has e8 it can move to. I don't see what bishop e8 does, apart from opening the rook. But
well, sorry, I just wanted to say, maybe if bishop e8, suddenly these ideas of bishop takes e5 become a lot stronger, because you can follow up with a move like e6 since the bishop is no longer there, or you can follow up with a move like knight d4. Again, with this pressure on the pawn, let's say you now go back, now e6. This is how nasty things can get, and you see the evaluation bar, it's just lights out. So Hikaru needs to be careful and keep his bishop on d7, which is a bit awkward, because that means, as you say, the rook has no vision.
And what did he do? He did make a move. Bishop
Oh,
f8.
oh. The evaluation bar jumps with some crazy tactics.
Okay, let's see them.
So the computer points out this not obvious plan at all of taking here, now playing g4. Remember, the bishop, when it was here, would allow knight h4. Now that's not an option. So
Can't take up to e7.
because if you go, oh yeah, because if you go to e7, there's this ridiculous move,
Oh,
bishop takes
God.
h7, with the point being that after king takes, I thought initially, oh, it's just queen d3, check, and you win the bishop and you're up a pawn. But how can the evaluation bar be going so crazy? It turns out it's something much more sinister than that. It's to play knight g5 check, hitting the king and hitting the pawn. You go back here, only move queen f3, putting pressure on this pawn, and threatening just to checkmate. You will go take, king here, check, king goes back and checkmate, zigzagging. And if you go bishop e8 to defend the pawn, now white just goes queen h3. And you are so, there's such
There's
a kind of
nothing to
peace
stop
cluster.
them.
Yeah, that there's no way to escape. If your bishop was not there, you could just go knight g6 and run with your king, but you don't have that option. So it's insane computer lines here. And the only question is, will Alireza, uh, who's a fantastic
Yeah.
tactician, will he sense an opportunity here and go looking for the kill?
He goes looking for the kill, but thankfully, maybe not in the best way. We are still alive. That line looked very, very scary with taking on c8 and g4. So yeah, as Donna is saying, thank God he didn't play it. After h4, it is still a tricky position, but do we have to now stop this idea of taking and g4? Probably, right? Like
Uh,
surely it's still an idea, right?
Taking, well, now with the pawn on h4, the
Ah,
queen
the queen
h3
cannot
themes
swing
will
around.
not
Ah,
work in the same way. So
that's a good point.
yeah, this is some good news that a bunch of those tactical ideas are gone, but
Mm,
not such great news either, because
no.
Alireza is not marching the H pawn, to make a quick draw.
Um, and what do we get? Bishop e8. All the bishops are coming home to the back rank.
He's nearly completed the the full stack here. Just the knight, and you were laughing at that knight, Fiona. You were saying that that
I
knight was a
know.
disgrace to the game of chess, but now the knight is actually the only piece upholding Hikaru's honor.
I was looking 1 second. I was looking for. I thought I'd seen. I thought I'd seen a question in the chat, but I can't find it now. Okay, never mind. Moving on. Moving on swiftly. So yeah, bishop e8. Somebody asked earlier, way back when, wouldn't Hikaru like to trade some rooks? I'm sure he would. Actually, why couldn't we have just... Oh, we could have as well, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then played rook c8, maybe.
Yeah.
I think perhaps if there was a reason, I mean, the computer says this would be about similar to what Hikaru chose. But maybe what Hikaru is concerned about is that this file might be more effective than this one, because white, just the bishops and the queen, they're just taking away all the entry squares. Whereas here, the bishop is a bit, maybe it's kind of reaching a little bit, and maybe that's not the reason why Hikaru chose bishop e8. Could also be a practical decision. Hikaru might feel that he is, even if Alireza can hang with him, he might feel, I'm a better blitz player, I'm a better bullet player. Let me keep as many pieces on the board, and let's see what happens as the clock moves closer to that, to those faster sort of blitz and bullet time controls.
And I'm curious, I have to say. I mean, Alireza just initiated some action on the king side here on the last move with h4. I'm curious to see how he's going to continue it. I know it's not suggested by the computer. Is g4 crazy? So we go back where, to e7, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Alireza played g4 here. It the computer doesn't think it's the best move, but from a human perspective, it makes sense. You want to maybe push the knight back, and then set up a queen bishop battery here and force black to making some kind of a reaction, like maybe g6, and creating some weaknesses that white might hope to take advantage of later on. So g4 to me seems like a very natural choice.
I see chat is saying keep pushing p. Well, we would be much happier to see him push this p, because the best move apparently is pushing ph.
Okay. I'll leave this to you in the chat. You in the chat to figure it out.
I don't know. So h5, but okay, I'm relieved to see the bar. I'm glad at least one it wasn't even funny. You shouldn't have laughed, Hikaru FTW69. So yeah, let's move swiftly back to the game. H5, I guess. I was gonna say, is the threat to keep pushing the pawn, or do we have to be so scared about H5? Why do we have to be so scared?
I think one thing, we don't have to be scared. Bang.
Bim bam boom. Okay,
Right.
and we breathe a big collective sigh of relief, I think, that this dreaded bishop is off the board.
Well, we still need Hikaru to find some precise moves here, and so it's something he's done time and time again, but the only solution is to first exchange these rooks, then take, and then play queen d6. So you can't really blame Alireza for playing a line that is forcing Hikaru, putting him against the wall, and demanding that Hikaru finds rook takes rook and queen d6. And I mean, even though we have the help of the computers here, if you had to explain why, for example, this queen d6 immediately, because the threat is this move e7 forking, but why not queen d6 straight away? Why is this a bad idea? And it's hard to understand it. So Hikaru could find himself in a little bit of trouble again if he chooses a move like queen d6 immediately. So I don't think that we're out of the woods just yet.
Yeah, Hikaru. Let's just go down the computer line to understand why is it crucial that he takes on c1. Hikaru still needs to find a couple of, I mean, the evaluation bar has dropped, but Hikaru needs to find these two moves, apparently. And Sato, don't worry if you didn't get a joke. I don't even know why I laughed, like there was no joke. I said PH because it was pawn H, but I should maybe, I don't know. And then in my head, I thought of Peter Heine Nielsen, and then I started laughing. That's that's the thought process, but there was no joke, and it was not funny, so do not feel bad.
I think Fiona, in this case, maybe you should have adopted the
Not
policy
explained.
of magicians. The magician never reveals his or her tricks, so the audience is amazed when you start to explain it in such detail. Questions might start to be getting asked,
Yeah.
But
Lights on, but nobody, so a bit harsh. So yeah, it is crucial that Hikaru finds this sequence of moves. Why can't we start with queen here? Because then we're...
It seems that apparently this position changes a lot after this move knight g5, and I don't know what the point is, that now after takes, there's rook d1, the queen is hit, queen e7, and now there's this ridiculous move bishop a3. So I think the fact that you don't trade rooks means that at the end of this line, if you take the bishop, there's queen takes e6. This is superhuman stuff, and blown away if either player is going into the trenches and figuring out this subtle difference.
Alex, good news. Rook c1 followed by queen d6 has been played.
This is the moment when in the interview we say to Hikaru, what about queen d6? And he just goes, oh no, there, rook takes c8, rook takes knight g5 and bishop a3 and my rook hangs. And then And then we realized that that it was all a part of the plan. But yeah, perfect defense from Hikaru. He finds the two far from obvious moves in a row.
Yeah, and I think now maybe maybe we can really sigh a sigh of relief. I said it earlier, I didn't realize how tricky the position still was. But now everything, I mean, we have the D file under our control, we have E6 under our control. You know, we are threatening to take, if we see a liquidation here, I feel if anything, I think, you know, if Alireza plays another careless move or two, Hikaru could even potentially take over the initiative with the bishop here.
Yeah, I mean, but this is sort of one of the things that Hikaru does so well, and we've said it a few times. I mean, he weathers the storm. He often gets a position. He kind of, I won't say gambles, but he has an approach with openings that sometimes he gets what he wants, and he has zero problems. And every once in a while, you have to suffer for a little while, but then he turns it around.
It's unbelievable, really, how he does it time and time again. How's the confidence level, Fiona? Good. Not so good about my move prediction. I think this is gonna be a long game. You think it could fizzle out?
Not necessarily. Hikaru has an option here to grant you your wish. With f takes e6, let's say that white, this might be kind of some little bit of a super grandmaster level silent draw offer, you know, where suddenly Alireza seems to be inviting this line, and after it takes, let's say, a move like a6 or maybe a move like rook d2, I don't know, but let's say something like this. And with such few pieces left on the board, you can see that the computer slightly prefers white, but it's almost insignificant. And we could potentially see, you know, the oracle that is Fiona. You know, you doubted yourself, but it could be happening sooner than you think here.
Do they get more time at move 40 or alike, or just think, so it's just the increment and it's a 10-second increment per move? And I'm curious now, will we see this line? Could it be Hikaru just under 4 minutes now? This is now a blitz game. If he doesn't take on e6, so what's this other move? If we play h6, could this lead to something similar-ish, or what is going on?
To my eyes, this looks a lot more scary because the king is much more out in the open. But yeah, from a computer perspective, absolutely, this is another direction in which the game can go. But yeah.
Hikaru has captured on e6.
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Queen takes.
Queen takes. So I mean, he, like Alireza, I think really is has lost his ambition to try and fight for a win. Maybe he senses I slipped up somewhere and now I'm happy to guide it into a draw. And I think Hikaru is probably going to be pretty happy to oblige. It's the black pieces, right?
Yeah, the bar is now back in the middle. If I didn't see the engine, which side would I rather play? Well, the thing is, if Alireza wants, can he? Maybe he can take here. I was gonna say this would just be, I think, an easy draw with the opposite colored bishops. But maybe after knight takes, maybe Hikaru can take here. The knight has to escape. And with the extra pawn, I would take black, and then my opponent would play rook c7, and I would think, oh, maybe it's not that much fun.
Yeah, I think Alireza is absolutely capable of calculating that line and evaluating it as equal. So I think we could see exactly that line that you just spoke about. If Alireza is really determined to make the draw, force it on the spot, he might just take.
Yeah, I don't actually have a big preference. I know I didn't answer your question. Who would I rather play? I think against a player of a similar level than me, I would, I think, feel that this is really very even. Maybe I would take black. Or actually, no, I probably would take white. Just I like knights. And I
Yeah.
feel that white still has a bit more activity, you know, if the rook comes in here, those pawns are a bit easier to attack. So I would probably take white.
I agree with you. One question I have though is what happens if bishop d7? Is there some trick here? Because if I'm looking to try and make a draw, I would lean towards this move.
Mhm.
Just hit the knight and then just get this trade and get everything off the board. But rook c5
Rook
apparently, but
c5.
bishop d7? What is the issue?
Yeah.
Wow, rook c7.
And suddenly now I would start being really stressed.
Okay, so yeah, so we can never be
But what
too
if we
relaxed.
go here?
Rook c8, and also
Yeah,
the
no,
computer is beating
yeah.
us 100% of the time, from either color. Um,
Okay,
so
let's go back to
here's a
the...
question though. Just one, sorry, if one question is after here, black could go for the rook endgame.
Oh, that's safer.
And then that
That
forces
is
knight takes
way
d7 and rook takes
safer.
d7.
The only
And this is
thing
this is
I would still be worried about would be
but
something, but
the
the
king
king is
gets
in
there,
time.
yeah.
Oh, not like this.
Because the
Oh,
the
I
pawn on
hung the
a7,
pawn.
yeah.
What did
So
I? Sorry.
you take and
Yeah, this
now
is just easy. So let's see. After bishop d4, Hikaru is still thinking. Both players now down to 2 minutes.
yeah.
I've already forgotten which move I even wanted to play. Bishop d7, you had said, right?
Bishop d7 seems to force a draw on the spot. The knight is hit, and if you play, well, one question I have is maybe if bishop e3 hits the rook and
rook d5.
or let's say anywhere really, I guess the knight, can it move back? I don't think that's an issue. So probably you're going to get some position like this, and maybe again white is just fractionally better, but you have to believe that Hikaru is going to navigate this position
Even
to
the
a
pawn
draw.
down with the opposite color bishop
Yeah,
should be a draw.
yeah.
And he did play your move. Bishop d7 is on the board, and bishop e3.
Yeah, so bishop e3 is interesting because Alireza is saying to Hikaru, not just yet.
Mm.
I know this endgame, even with opposite color bishops, is a little bit better. It's a little bit better for me, and I'm going to try and squeeze blood out of a stone here. Because otherwise, I mean, I think, let's say a lot of players, say if I'm playing Hikaru, I'm just thinking, okay, I can take here, take. I get a rook and pawn endgame completely equal. And they're just really focused on that draw. But Alireza wants to keep some chances alive.
But how are you going to do that? Because that knight at some point right now, you're going to have to do something about that knight, which is under attack.
So I think the line is, let's say that white takes the bishop. So we take this bishop, king takes, bishop takes a7, takes, and this is the move we were speaking is a little bit awkward to defend because there's a double attack. And if you go bishop d7, that's the move I think most people would want to play. Suddenly rook c7, there's a new double attack. You cannot go rook here to defend your pawn because the bishop would fall. And if you do something like bishop c6, now there is a6. So there's a little bit of pawn
danger
yeah.
for sure to watch out for. We've had a couple of moves. Alireza did take on f8, king takes, and surely we will see this line bishop takes a7 being played.
One question I have is, is there an no, a6?
A6?
Then Alireza just wants to draw straight away.
But how do you make the draw immediately?
I take bishop b5. And I just swap everything. Because now let's say you go something like this, and I take king here, and bishop takes a7.
With no pawns.
With no pawns on the queen side, it becomes a more straightforward defense. So I think that will they just troll you, Fiona, and sort of bring it maybe to move 43, 44?
No, but I said
I thought you said 40, no?
no, 36, I think.
36 moves. Okay. For some reason I thought you had said 40. And I had said 53, yeah? You're looking in a lot better shape than me.
I think nobody in the chat, did anyone make a guess apart from us about how many moves this game was gonna last? I think it is, but what is Hikaru thinking about actually? I'm just looking at his body language, and
Yeah,
is he
no.
seeing? I was
Unless,
thinking this game is almost over, but Hikaru, I think he's seeing some ghosts.
okay, so B6, should I show it or not?
Yeah, sure.
So B6 is apparently losing.
But he has 10 seconds only. What is?
Okay, let's just focus and see what he does. Oh goodness, he's actually played B6, which is apparently losing. But why? Oof. Yeah, this is losing against best play.
But what could he have seen? Let's just go back. What did he see here? There must be something we're missing.
Did he somehow maybe have a blind spot and he thought that after taking here, the only way to target the rook is with the pawn, but if you do that, you get hit with bishop c5. Maybe in the time scramble, you have like
Maybe.
some slight oversight. Maybe he was worried that if I go here, maybe there's like a check and I pick up the pawn. I don't know. It's just speculation.
Let's go to the game.
So b6, rook c7 played, bishop takes, rook a3. And the problem here is exactly this punishing move, rook a8 check, which Alireza finds, king f7 and a7. This is bad news. This is very bad news.
But where is the win?
It's a ridiculous win. You win by taking the pawn, rook takes, rook. Oh, okay. You want,
I wanted to.
yeah, and rook c8.
Oh no. Okay, and here?
And rook c8 or rook b8, yeah.
Oh
And
wow.
the pawn is going, it's going to be this, you're going to be down in exchange and it's going to be, um,
That is shocking. Yeah, I think as Snorri Castle is saying, he saved it. I mean, I think you're probably right that he had a blind spot about that the bishop could attack the pawn. Hikaru looks really unhappy. He must realize that this is losing now. And he must realize that he had done, I mean, he had defended so well
yeah.
to stay in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically a masterclass in handling that constant pressure and a little bit unfortunate as well with the way the clock kind of ran out. I think if Hikaru had a few more seconds left,
Is this actually so easily won?
well, it's winning. I don't know if it's easily won, but usually when the rook here is defending the pawn from the side, this becomes a serious problem. Let's see
What's
actually.
the way to win? Do you? I don't think when the is the way to win to bring the king?
I think the king comes over and it can hide on a8, for example. So Hikaru will try to block the king's path, but sooner or later this king can arrive here to b3, and then it can move towards here, and it can always hide. And you get a configuration where, say, the king is here, rook is on b7. If it gets checked from behind, and then you advance. This is the problem. If this rook here is on a8, that can be very awkward. But now Hikaru will try to prevent the king from advancing. You see this move f4 to block off, perhaps try to confuse Alireza, but sooner or later the king will be able to enter. And the white rook is just nastily placed here as well, because black can never move his king over without worrying about potentially losing those pawns. So black would have to, spend a few moves just moving these pawns. And meanwhile, white is gaining time and can just advance with king to d3. And yeah, I think that whether whether we or anyone in the chat would convert this is one question, but the other question is, will Alireza convert it? And I think Alireza will know.
But the problem is with this rook being paralyzed, having to stay on the a file, it's also just really hard. I mean, if Hikaru can somehow, let's say these come off, if he can get in f3 and create a passed pawn, I'm sure he's looking for something like that. But the problem as well is 10-second increment, and I think Hikaru right now, his body language, he is thinking of previous moments in this game, where Did it go wrong? I wouldn't rule out that he's seeing now that the bishop, could just attack the pawn. Okay, let's see. Can he? I would not feel super confident, I have to say, that it is 100% winning. What happens if you f3, g3, and he just
G3, keep the pawns locked down. So now f3, so that black doesn't have this plan. Wait for the moment to play h4. Now you play f3, and there is no king h4, king g3 ideas or anything like this. I would say that's how Alireza will play. But what a terrible pity, because it was really such excellent defensive play from Hikaru throughout the whole game.
Yeah, these losses are very, very well. It's not over yet. Let's see. Alireza only has seconds on the clock, but he does find f3. Hikaru's still looking for that chance. I mean, if the king gets in,
the problem is rook
g7.
g7, yeah. And I think that's already been played, right?
Yeah,
rook g7, you lock the king, you keep the king in a jail. And I mean, what Hikaru wants to try and get is to sacrifice here, so that after rook takes, there's king g3. And then I can take and then run this pawn up, and your king is far enough away. But the problem is, like, let's say after here, unfortunately, this idea of sacrificing just doesn't work, because whenever you try and approach the pawn, white's rook is in time to defend it. So you can't even get that. If you could get, let's say you could get this position here with king takes f3, you would have some chances. Apparently it's still lost, but let's say this position here is equal. So you see what I mean? That there are some theoretical draws, but you're not getting that. You're not going to be able to sort of, that picture that Hikaru might have in his mind, he's not going to be able to actually guide the game towards that.
Yeah, and well, it is Hikaru's move, but he's not really looking at the board any longer. I think mentally he has resigned this game. I don't know if there's screens there, if he's looking at another game, or if he's just remembering his own game, and because he must understand that b6. We saw he was very unhappy in that moment. I think he knew when he played b6 that it was a losing move.
Yeah.
And it could very well be, he has that position on his mind still, that he is thinking, what the heck, how did I think it happens at every, it sucks that we're here and we're, but if I was, happens sometimes to the best in the world, I think in a way it shows that they are just human as well. And to me, it shows me, that as a commentator, I should never write the games off. The game is over, by the way. Hikaru has resigned, because these blind spots, they happen, of course, a lot less often with the best players in the world, but they happen. And I think the players were just discussing that one moment, actually.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah. Let's see, we'll have time to go back, but there is one more game underway. All the games except for Hikaru's loss to Alireza have ended in draws. And this double rook endgame, well, Prague has an extra pawn, but with this king here and the two rooks, surely this can't be anything other than a draw. By the way, do not take here, because if anything here, I would take black for sure, but surely this will just end in a repetition or with some material coming off.
Yeah.
Hello, Truthy.
Hey, Truth.
So yeah, Hikaru is gonna have to bounce back. He will be white. The next game is against Levon Aronian. Then the last game of the day is going to be a big one, where Nepo will be looking for revenge after being eliminated from the SCC by Hikaru. Yesterday was a tough start to the day as well, so hopefully it goes the same way. It goes upwards again from here. This is a very long tournament. Remember that the Rapid and the Blitz are all counted together. There's, after the Rapid, still 18 games of Blitz, so a long way ahead. But it's very frustrating to lose in that fashion when you were under pressure the whole game and then you fought well to get back to a drawn position to then throw it away because you have a blind spot for a second. It is very tough, but you know, I think Hikaru, especially with his attitude these days, he will be able to just move on and focus on the next game. Meanwhile, here Prague still has an extra pawn, but Alex, it's not going to be enough, is it?
No, and yeah, I agree with you. I think Hikaru will be a bit annoyed, but he'll shake it off because it's the nature of chess, right? It's such a brutal, unforgiving game, and 1 second lapse in focus and hours of work, if it's a classical game, can get undone. So I think, Hikaru will only see this as just, something that happens, right? Like it just happens to everyone from time to time. Yeah, in terms of this game, I think we're going to see a handshake pretty soon. There's no checkmating nets, almost no material left. And yeah, looks like it's going to be a peaceful result.
And is this just a perpetual now? Can the king try to run to a4? Oh, it's not even an extra pawn any longer anymore, so yeah, my best guess is the players will repeat here, the two youngsters, the two youngest players in the field. And another peaceful round. I'm surprised for a rapid event how many draws we have seen so far. Is Nordicbeck just using the other rook now? He is, yeah?
I don't know. I to be honest with you, I wasn't looking in this position yet. Check and here.
By the way, Don Esperin, challenge commentator, spell Nepo's full name without looking at it. I can actually spell it, can you?
Indeed.
Alex actually played the man.
I played it. I had to
write it on the
his
score
name
sheet.
on the score sheet. And
It's
yeah.
actually one of my favorite things when you see players like Magnus or Hikaru when they play in an open and they show up to the game and then they look at the player's name shield to write the name.
Well, the funny thing is with Jan Nepomniachtchi, even though he's such a well-known player, his name is so long and tricky that he probably wouldn't take offense if you looked it up. But it would be hilarious because if I hadn't actually played, because I was playing on the Irish team and it was Ireland versus Russia, and so I knew I was going to be paired against one of two players. It was either going to be Jan Nepomniachtchi, or it was going to be a man who is even better known these days than he was before. I'm sure Hikaru fans will be very accustomed to hearing his name. It's Mr. Vladimir Kramnik, of course. And at the time, I was actually hoping to play Kramnik because I knew this was likely his last Olympiad and, former world champion and a legend. And I think it would have been quite funny to troll him and sort of look over at his name, to see, oh, how do you spell this, Mr. Kramnik? I think he would have. Would he have seen the funny side of it, Fiona? What do you think?
I don't know.
You know him in person.
Yeah. I don't think he would have found it. Well, maybe, but I don't.
No.
I think if he understood it was a joke, maybe.
Even then, I think especially then he would take offense. Yeah.
Put some respect on this name. Your game would have been interesting. Imagine you could have had the procedure.
I know, yeah.
Performed.
Yeah.
And these guys really love playing chess.
Yeah.
Somehow, Nordicbeck is gonna end up with himself being the extra pawn.
No, I think
that's not even true. What did I even say? He's gonna be the extra pawn.
He's going to turn into a literal pawn, is what you express.
Alex, what do you think of what Kramnik is doing?
That's a wonderful question. I think that my opinion is not necessary since so many opinions have been shared.
Don't be shy.
No, come on. This is not a question of shyness. It's a question of self-preservation, I think, No, I mean, look, I agree that there's a historically probably a bigger cheating problem than many people suspect. I actually know myself. I was a moderator for a certain website back in the day,
I
and
think you can say
for lead test many years ago, and as a result, I was able to kind of look a little bit into that whole behind the scenes thing. And obviously, I won't go into any of the methods used in that, but I can say that one thing it opened my eyes to is just the sheer devastating frequency of cheating that is happening, not just at the professional level, but at all levels. Um, and me as a coach, for instance, I had multiple students who were cheating. I mean, they were paying to take lessons and to improve, but still they were susceptible to cheating in some form or another, not even for prize money. So there's something in the human condition, I guess, that makes it happen more often than we'd like to admit. And I guess that is a big part of what motivated Kramnik initially. But at the same time, I don't agree with the individuals that he's sort of called out as potential cheaters. I don't
and
share
the
those
way,
suspicions, the
yeah.
approach, the way, and um, the refusal to sort of take any input, as far as I can tell, from like people who share a conflicting perspective. I'm not, um, yeah, go Kramnik on any of those side of things, Yeah,
Excuse me.
that's what you think about it.
That's what
That's what people think about Kramnik.
I used to find it almost funny, all the tweets and everything, just as an outsider. But I do know Kramnik not very well, but a little bit. I've always gotten on well. For me, it's almost a bit sad even to see, um, the road he's going down. And like, I agree that, fighting against cheating isn't battle for chess, but yeah, I just don't think this is the way to go.
And it's a pity because people are forgetting just what an incredible chess player
Mm.
he actually was, and the insane amount of amazing contributions that he made to the actual game of chess. I mean, uh, so it's a little bit of the pity that the two things, like one is his amazing achievement and contributions, is being a little bit overshadowed in recent times by this whole cheating situation.
We will go on a break for a second. I don't know if you can answer this, but Stocking Philosopher is asking, when you were a moderator, at which ELO level did you see cheating the most frequently?
Honestly, I mean, this was years ago, but as far as I recall, at all levels. I mean, you're going to see more at the amateur level because I guess there's like more cases because there's a higher number of players, right? But I would say that the percentages, I don't know. I would be speaking uh, in a kind of somewhat clueless fashion here. I don't have the stats, but to me, if you ask me to work off memory, I would say yeah, it was pretty uniform across the board. I guess maybe a bit less at the titled player level, just because those players have more on the line. I don't think it's because um, there's
Better people.
there's well, maybe
Better title, better people.
they're just morally superior people. What can be said, Fiona?
I think that's a perfect note to leave it on.
I was
Guys, unfortunately, this game did not go Hikaru's way. We will be back with game 2 in just a few. The game starts in 12 minutes. He will be playing white against Levon. Let me just triple check that. Yeah, he will be white against Levon. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you in just a few. Welcome back, everyone. It's day 2 of the St. Louis Rapid and BLitz. Unfortunately, it's not the start that we were hoping for Hikaru today, as he lost the first game to Alireza. But there will be plenty of time for revenge in Paris in just a few weeks' time. Now, it's full focus on the next game, which starts in just 3 minutes. And Alex, what do you expect from this encounter against Levon?
Well, Hikaru will fancy himself as a favorite, both because he is the high-rated player and he has the white pieces. And Levon hasn't been showing his best play over the last couple of years. So I think Hikaru is going to look to strike back here.
By the way, for those of you who enjoyed Jose's commentary or in general are fans of Jose, you told me during the break that he won the early title Tuesday.
Yeah, I think he came first on tie breaks ahead of none other than Magnus Carlsen.
Very impressive stuff. He will be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day of the rapid portion before we move to the Blitz on Thursday and Friday, but that's still a long way away. Hikaru yesterday opened with e4. I guess he will stick with that. I think in general, probably, I guess when he prepares for an event like this one, he prepares mostly one first move. At least that's what I imagine. So I think we might very well see another Rui Lopez. What do you think?
I'll be honest, Fiona, I have absolutely no predictions here. What was the move number in the first game actually? Who got closer? I genuinely don't remember. I'm
Well,
not
certainly you.
not setting you up.
Excuse me. I did the one thing I told you not to do. Let's see, how many moves was it? Don't tell me you... 54. If you hadn't shown me with an odd number, you might have actually guessed it exactly.
Yeah, that's actually true. That's actually true. So what's the number this time, Fiona?
This time, 42.
42.
And your number?
I have to say, you know what? 37.
Okay.
37.
You stick with that strategy. We'll see what happens. For those of you, I really dislike, I don't know, I've always disliked odd numbers. It's just a little quirk. I don't think it's, more than a quirk, but for example, the radio, I'll always put it, oh, we see a Sicilian. There goes my prediction of Rui Lopez, and Hikaru repeats F4, which he tried against MVL yesterday. And we saw this exact sequence of moves. I think, oh, my memory. Where is Jose when I need him? My memory is so terrible. I think MVL played Bishop D7, if I recall correctly. But anyway, it's a brand new day, a brand new game. One thing I'm curious about is, will Levon have... I mean, for him to start thinking here is strange. Is it a case of, when Hikaru played this risky line as black against Fabi in the Sicilian in the candidates, I think everyone, including Fabi, thought that's a one-time opening. He's not going to use that again. So do you think Levon could possibly have thought, surely he's not going to repeat this?
I don't know, because as you say, I mean, by this point, Hikaru has shown a willingness to repeat lines that are considered not to be so threatening or so, let's say premium lines, right? The kind of your Rui Lopez, your Sicilians, this type of Sicilian here with F4. Usually when we were growing up, we were taught this is playable, but maybe at the highest level it's not playable, or at least at the highest level you can find better options. But Hikaru's been a little bit reinventing a player's relationship to a wide range of openings.
I mean, he has said over and over again, these days you can play pretty much anything. Yesterday, I think we had this exact same position on the board, and Jose was saying, this is a possibility, but he thought this endgame is quite nice for white. So I don't expect Levon to go into it.
Levon does what Levon wants to do, so I agree with you. It makes you wonder, though. I mean, if this was a possibility yesterday, is this actually Levon's preparation? He's decided, you know what, if he does repeat, I have this path and I'm confident that I can guide this queenless middle game to a comfortable equality.
Yeah, I mean, I see Casey Ninja saying draw. I think most of you guys will have seen me commentate here enough to know that I always lose a bit of my enthusiasm for position when the queens come off. But I wouldn't say that this is an immediate draw. I'm so confused. I see Jaren's saying he's sorry, but what's he sorry for? For my terrible prediction? Or for what? For the commentator's curse. I don't know. Anyway, we do get this endgame, and surely Hikaru must have studied this endgame more in depth than Levon. I mean, it is clear that e4, f4 is a weapon that he had prepared for this tournament. So, Alex, tell me, why is this not just a draw? Why is there some life here? How is White gonna try and get a small edge in this endgame?
I mean, I think this is objectively a draw, but let's say, for example, the most maybe principled way, meaning by principle I mean just the chess principle of fighting for the center, would be to play this pawn sacrifice. And the point is that after this exchange, White is up a pawn for now, but Black has to move knight g4, looking to win a rook here with knight f2. So White would have to stop this, and then Black would be in time to win back his pawn. And I think that that White is slightly better. The White dream here would be some kind of exchange here, and suddenly make the I have a little bit more of the center than Black does. Also, my bishop is on a dark square. My central pawns are on light squares. That's a good sort of, they complement each other well. Whereas the bishop here for Black is tripping up a little bit more over the Black pawn here on c5. This is kind of, but it's really, I mean, we're fighting for tiny edges, right? And this is only if Black plays into White's hand with this exchange. But maybe this is the kind of stuff that Hikaru has studied in depth. And yeah, at these levels, those tiny little edges can actually can make a world of difference.
In the game, Levon did not go e5. Instead, he immediately brought the rook to the center with d8, rook d8. Hikaru is stepping out of that pesky pin, and the bishop is going to be fianchettoed, I guess, to g7. So Hikaru immediately fighting against the bishop, but also taking control over these two squares, making sure the knight can never jump into either b4 or d4. I imagine Levon is going to continue with bishop g7, and then my main question is, how do we deal with those two pieces? Where is the knight from d2 going to go?
Yeah, I mean, if this was, say, a blitz game or something, I mean, the first move that would come to mind for me would be e5, with the idea being that once the knight is driven away, now the pawn on f4 is hit. But now, once the pawn is no longer on e4, you can play knight e4, you can defend your pawn this way with the bishop, and you can target the pawn on c5. But the problem here is, let's say you go something like b6, you play like this. Now, how is White going to develop? Say that White develops the bishop. Here is Black's plan. Let's say castle, rook d1, and now this move, f6. With a pawn break, we talked about this in the French defense here with f6 in the last game. And suddenly, even though the queens are off the board, which is a relief for White with his king in the center of the board, but still, let's say you take, it's not ideal to have your knight there in the line of fire in the same e-file as the White king. So White has to be a little bit careful. I mean, this plan of e5 and putting the knight on this beautiful central square looks appealing, but might actually contain more danger than we think.
I see an alert emote in the chat. What does it mean? Hopefully it's good news. Let's see. Bishop h6 was played, so the bishop went one square further. And Hikaru does go for the e5 push you were just talking about. We were saying, though, have to be careful. I think this alert was maybe not much has happened. The eval says 0.04, so Nothing dramatic has happened, but we are going to get some clarification here, surely, with this pawn tension.
Yeah, maybe I'm just thinking about how Hikaru, trying to guess what Hikaru might have in mind. Maybe the idea is just to go knight e4, target the pawn, and after b6, somehow ignore this tension, maybe drive this knight away. But
I
if
would be so worried to make a
yeah,
move like c4.
start to have some danger here, and even let's say you do something like this starts to be exactly the kind of stuff you're concerned with. You give up this d4 square, and black just swarms all over it with the knights.
Knight e4. Chat has now figured out they control me easily. Whenever the alerts come out, I'm like, let's go back to the live position.
But what are the alerts? Are you talking about this little alert?
Usually it means like if the eval bar swings by more than 0.5, you can be sure that they'll be out in force. But here they started, I think the alarms went off after f6, which...
Do you feel like chat is sort of evolving in their troll game of you? Do you feel that
Oh,
as
they
they
got
know
to
you
be
better?
good. I think I never told you. Who in the chat remembers the candidates' commentary when I asked who is the player? I can't even remember the name now. Somebody, surely, there's 5,000 people here. Somebody will remember what I'm talking about. Ligma, exactly. They know. Somebody in chat said, oh, don't you know the famous game, Someone Against... And I was like, who's Ligma? Ah, good times. Did you know? Would you have known?
Well, I'm not gonna even venture here. I'm out. We can clarify my understanding after.
Okay. So anyway, I think chats know me. They know that, they won't catch me out every time, but sometimes. B6 has been played, and yeah, I mean, I can't believe the computer wants to play c4. I would never play that move in a million years.
Fiona, there is a little part of you that might be saying, give me that. You get a little bit greedy, hungry for that pawn on f6.
I was so concerned about my holes on the queen side that I didn't even see this pawn hanging.
Yeah, it's king f7, something like knight g4, bishop g7, and it's true. I mean, yeah, the weaknesses here on the queen side seem really like, yeah, very dangerous. Especially, I mean, such a great player with the initiative, Levon, Aronian. So I mean, if you do this, I think you're right. I think Hikaru is not going to grab a pawn like this.
Feels very greedy.
Yeah, does feel super greedy.
I mean, computers, we all know they like to grab pawns and they'll just defend perfectly, but does not look like fun to me. Aronian is away from the board. Chessfan is saying, wow, Levon is from the US. So Levon, of course, is originally from Armenia and just switched over to the US a few years back. But the problem is, if you don't go c4, then what do you do?
Yeah, I think this is why we're seeing Hikaru thinking a little bit here. It's not clear, and has to be said, Levon is probably quite happy with what he's got here from the black side. Yeah, black's pieces are just very well placed. They're very aggressively placed. There's a bunch of pressure here against this pawn. The white king is not fully safe on e2, even though it's pretty safe because there's no queens, there's no light square bishops. But still, there is this constant tension here. And the concern that Hikaru is going to have is, let's say here you don't play c4, you do something like bishop d2, maybe black puts the king here and brings the rook over. And what are you going to do? I mean, what is the white plan? Are you going to start moving the king away and playing something like rook e1 and just staying solid? Seems that this is, as the evaluation bar shows, seems this is a path to equality. But wouldn't be surprised if Hikaru is kind of not too happy if this is what he has to do from the white side.
The problem is at this point, it could already. I have to say, I like the way Levon has handled this. I wasn't happy when the queens came off. And one thing I'm wondering, I really didn't want to play c4 because of the knight landing here. Is a3 just way too slow? Because my idea is I want to play c4 without allowing the knight
Yeah,
here.
that would be ideal. Yeah, that would be great.
But the computer says bishop will just go back here and will.
Maybe, sorry, no, I was just going to say maybe even f takes e5 is more human here because now if c4, now you have the f6 square. So I would say if Hikaru goes a3, we might get some position like this. Let's say now bishop g7, putting a ton of pressure on this pawn. And what are you going to do with it? I mean, you can keep on advancing it, but sooner or later it's at risk that it just gets picked off, and suddenly as white you're down a pawn. So that again, Hikaru has been thinking for a good few minutes at this point, and it's all got to do with the fact that the stakes are higher than they appear to be here.
Yeah, I mean, could he, do you think, after looking at the different options, then turn his attention back to making c4 work? See if, if even if he has to give the pawn back at some point, if he can drive that into some.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. It could be that he goes for c4, not out of greed to win a pawn, but just because he feels that is maybe the cleanest path to an equal position. I think, yeah, I think absolutely there's a chance that he goes for this. And he may very well still be about to go for this. He might just be choosing first to take on f6, wait for this recapture, and then play c4. So we could see this idea.
And I think it's tricky to start with this move because you at least make Levon think, well, if I don't want to give up the pawn, then I can take with the knight. But I think here Hikaru would be happy. He's not going to take now and do Levon the favor of fixing his pawn structure. Instead, he will drop the knight back, probably, I guess, to f2.
Yeah.
And here, I think he should be happy with this e-pawn being a long-term weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. Because here I think black would probably end up with some plan to try to play e5. But the worst case scenario for white is just a bunch of pieces and pawns come off the board and you make a draw, So I think that he would be pretty relaxed here if Levon recaptures with the knight.
So,
but
he does take with the pawn, yeah. And now the question again, will we see c4? Will Hikaru go after this pawn? Or will he just make a quiet developing move like bishop d2, like rook e1? I think the position is fine for Hikaru, whether he grabs the pawn or not. I just feel like Levon maybe is a little bit happier right now, especially I think the psychological aspect, as black, Levon understands that he has equalized, at least equalized out of the opening. If anything, his pieces are maybe a bit better placed. But yeah, I think nothing to be scared about.
No, I think much closer to equality than to either side having an advantage. And yeah, it's what you say. The part that kind of sucks for Hikaru is having lost the first game of the day. You want to try and strike back against Levon, who Hikaru is on paper for sure favorite against. And as the way the opening has evolved, it's more or less, I was going to say back to the drawing board. I mean, in the sense that you have to start afresh here if you're white to try to carve out any edge because it's a pretty equal position. And in fact, with so many pieces off the board, it's harder to create winning chances for either side. So that's probably really the biggest thing. If Hikaru was a little bit annoyed if he was super ambitious going to the game, but you know him better than I do. Do you think he would be very ambitious?
Oh, well, I think Hikaru, I mentioned this yesterday. I think all in all, he's just he's quite objective. He's not someone who takes reckless risks unless there's no way. But I saw people were discussing, is there still a chance in the tournament? Remember, this is only day 2 of the Rapid after today. Tomorrow there are 3 more games of Rapid, and then there's 18 games of Blitz. I think Hikaru, it's not a secret that he much prefers Blitz over Rapid. I think he has mentioned in the past that Rapid is probably his least favorite time control. So there is absolutely no need for Hikaru here to go all out to try and beat Levon. So if he feels like, okay, the opening just wasn't a success, I don't think he will be devastated to make a draw here. In fact, I look at this position and I think, is it so impossible that we might see some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Exchanging everything, some kind of liquidation in the not too distant future. If you imagine a rook coming to e8 and just maybe some pieces, I don't know how to orchestrate it, but with the rooks coming off, I think if all rooks come off and one pair, maybe even all rooks, because of the symmetrical pawn structure, I think potentially there could not be much life left. We're not there just yet. I am shocked by the computer move, King D1, another move I would never consider in a million years. I would immediately go back to F1. What's the idea here of stepping into, okay, Hikaru is human, I'm glad.
Yeah, I think that the computer just thought that the king on c2 is maybe a little bit closer to the action, as the pawns might march forward for either side on the queen side. I think that's probably why the computer suggested that.
Cogger is not bad. Elimination. Chat is good. Some of you guys, some of your jokes are as terrible as mine, so I appreciate it. King F1 is played. If you're black and you're feeling ambitious, you feel you're the one with a slight advantage, how do you try and press?
I would say try and play c4. I mean, maybe if black wants to try something, advancing the pawns like this, grabbing some space and maybe flying this bishop to a square like what's that, green, square like c5, that would be sort of the perfect picture for black, because then all of black's minor pieces would be a bit better. This pawn here would kill off the knight. This white knight has no jumps, and the bishop runs into its own pawns. So that's probably, if Levon is really ambitious, he'd probably go for something like that. But there's a part of me that thinks you might get that liquidation or whatever other names. I shouldn't have. I messed up. But yeah, I mean, it could be the case that Levon just says, okay, let's go something like rook e8, one pair of rooks off the board, then rook e1, king f8, and get rid of these king e2. And are the players able to offer draws this early, or?
I don't actually know. Great question. I wondered about it yesterday, and I thought I should really look up the answer, and I forgot. So if any of you good people in the chat or anyone from our team knows whether the players are allowed to, I have to say, I went to the website to find out the time control before yesterday. I struggled. I didn't struggle. I failed to find the time control on the website. I had to literally Google St. Louis and Rapid and BLitz time control, and then I found it somewhere. But at least for me, the official website was not easy to navigate. So if I failed to find the time control, yeah, I did not find anything about no draw offers. Rook e8, offering a trade of rooks.
What are you laughing at?
The last comment.
Alex looks like Turkish Mr. Beast. It's oddly specific.
Also, Mr. Beast is in hot waters a bit. The very contrary. He's gone from Mr. Good Guy to one of the controversial guys out there. I'm still not sure how exactly. Okay, we hear that nothing is
people are happy with it. So thank you for drawing everybody's attention to.
As far as we can see from our team, there is nothing against draw offers. Fiona, are you working on your GM title? No, I'm currently working on getting back to 2100. We'll see how that goes at the Olympiad.
Don't sort of keep the truth from the chat. You were busy chipping away, putting in the hours today on last few days on some puzzles.
Yeah,
sharpening.
I am sharpening my tools ahead of my return to competition after my nightmare tournament in March. One pair of rooks has come off.
How are you feeling about the Olympiad actually? In Budapest.
And the Olympiad is always a very special event. I mean, almost everyone is there. I think out of the top guys, Hikaru is probably the only one skipping the Olympiad. And it's a big, I don't want to say festival, but it's the biggest event we have in the chess world. It's a fun time, but it is a long tournament. If it doesn't go well, Fiona against Hikaru in Puzzle Championship, that wouldn't be fun. I really don't enjoy it when I do puzzle battles and I come up against someone who's much better than me, and all I hear is like click, 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 click from all their solving. Not a fun time. So yeah, I'm looking forward, but I hope I will do well. Otherwise, it's not gonna be so much fun. But we'll see. It's starting quite soon, just under a month now. So we'll see how it goes. Bishop f6. Hikaru is thinking, can I offer another trade? Okay, other random question. Do I think Joe can become? Who is Joe now? I don't know. Chess boxing between these two players. That's an interesting one, actually. I feel like Levon and Hikaru are similar-ish height and build, probably. I feel they would actually, as far as top players go, be a good matchup. I recently commented on chess boxing for the first time. True, the Irish Championship just concluded 2 days ago. He missed his chance for another year, maybe next year. I digressed a million times. I did just ask you if I could offer a trade of rooks.
No, you were analyzing Hikaru and Levon, Aronian's bodily proportions, and then after that you were saying about commentary. You commentated chess boxing.
Yeah, and then the Irish Champs. So there's a lot going on.
But you didn't
answer the question.
Oh no, sorry, go ahead.
About the chess boxing.
I thought that you were going to mention something more about like the commentary or how that was as an experience.
Chess boxing, I think, is very interesting. I have a feeling that neither Levon nor Hikaru would be particularly interested.
No, I was gonna say, like, I don't think we're ever gonna get this, but there's a line. I just want to check if it works, because if it works, it's quite nice. That if you go check here, rook takes. I was wondering for a second, does this move work?
Maybe it does.
With the point being that if you took here, you go rook d6, and if you take here, there's king e2, and the rook is trapped, and so you're gonna end up winning one of these pieces and then picking up the rook. But it doesn't work.
Why not?
Black has this move.
Like g5. Let's go.
Okay, but it was certainly not part of the original plan, you know. Okay, rook takes
let's stick to the original plan then. Here, yeah, rook, bishop takes c3.
No, I just mean once you take here,
but there's king f2 makes sense, much more sense than knight g5.
King f2. True, yeah, and there's one saving grace actually here, which apparently this is equal
Okay,
here
yeah,
because
this
the rook
is
is very
very hard
active.
to spot. It's an interesting tactic, though.
Yeah, I wonder actually after takes is sacrificing here it's the only move that gives complete equality for black. But in any case, I don't think that possibility is going to show up because that would require Levon to choose this move knight e3, and I don't think he wants to swap his strong knight for this somewhat passive bishop.
Yeah,
So he goes
Levon.
king f7 and c.
C4, finally, this move we had been talking about. I would still not have played it. But what is, I guess the idea must be quite concrete. Is it bishop c3?
Yeah, I guess he wants to bring that bishop to life. It's been doing not much on the d2 square.
These pawns look weak, but they're actually controlling a lot of squares. I don't think they're weak at all here. So maybe this is what Hikaru is aiming for.
Yeah, I think in the long run, the pawns are definitely a little bit dangerous if they're left like that. But I agree with you that, yeah, it would be double-edged. But Levon actually has decided now I will take. I will force you to give up your dark square bishop, maybe because of what you say that the bishop was going to go to c3 and challenge black's strong bishop.
But I'm wondering here, where is my liquidation? I was wondering if I could play knight e5 actually.
Yeah,
But
I
maybe
think
this
that's a
knight.
bit. because of pawn takes with a trick.
You can take because of the fork. And if the bishop goes back.
Now you're starting to liquidate king e6 maybe, or rook takes c4, rook takes a7, but
Doesn't like it so much. I think I would prefer, but I always get too optimistic. I think, oh, I have a passed pawn and I'm on the 7th rank and I've got a knight which can come in with a check.
yeah, I think this
But
is
maybe it's not all that rosy.
it's much more risky
Yeah.
than what Hikaru is going to be looking for. So I think he's going to just play it solid and say, maybe if someone stands better, it should probably be black. I think this bishop is a little bit more powerful than, the bishop and the knight are working a little bit better than these two knights. And the two knights, they want to jump to that e5 square, but the black pieces have it under control. So I think Hikaru is going to have to be a bit more patient. Maybe after rook e4, just defend the pawn and say to Levon, okay, how are you going to make any progress here?
Yeah, somebody was just saying in the chat, Hikaru does not look happy. I think it's not so much that he hates his position here. I think if he's unhappy, it's more that he didn't really get anything with the white pieces. Remember, at this level, very often with black, you're happy to be solid and make a draw, and you press with white. And here, the truth is, he didn't get to press Levon at all. Levon equalized out of the opening with ease. So I think if Hikaru is not looking happy, I don't think it's because he's worried about the position he has right now. I think it's because he might still be thinking a bit of that first game, because I'm sure he found out, well, I guess he realized even during the game, but at the latest, after somebody will have told him, I'm sure, or he looked it up, that it was just an easy draw. So it could just be, I think he looks more uninterested, like, okay, let's end this game. Nothing's gonna happen here, and have a quick rest, and then get ready for the last game of the day, which will start one hour from now. Okay, what about rook e1 now and just get the rooks off?
The problem is if, say, you go rook e1 and black just ignores it, you're not, you want knight d2 maybe, because
I cannot take it, yeah.
Doesn't look like it. So yeah, but at the same time, maybe rook e1 is a good move, because let's say you do something like this, you just sort of sit and you wait, and you say to black, okay, yeah, what are you going to do? If you ever move it back, then I can take you, because I won't be walking into this problem of having my knights forked if I exchange straight away. And if you exchange me, I'm happy, and so we just play this little dance. of the two rooks eyeing each other up.
I'm sorry, I had to laugh because Cash and Blue is saying, hope you're enjoying the lovely Irish weather at the moment, Fiona. Best summer ever. Which, to be fair, it hasn't been terrible. But if that is the best summer ever, then you
Okay.
haven't had many good summers.
Yeah, I mean, they may have been being a little bit sarcastic.
Yeah, I was
I think you
wondering.
knew well that they're being sarcastic, but
I
you
think
saw
so
an
now.
opportunity.
It's been
You saw
okay.
an opportunity
It's only
to
rained 3 times
you
in the past
to
week.
take a shot at the Irish weather,
I
and you
never
took
miss
it.
an
No,
opportunity.
no. Sometimes you actually engineer opportunities where they don't even exist. Take a shot at it. Fiona once described Ireland as she said, of all the countries I've been to, and I've been to a lot, of all the countries I've been to, Ireland has the worst weather. I mean, she's been to Siberia and to God only knows where, you know. Lived a year in Norway, but no, Ireland is where it's at for the worst weather you can get.
There's a great question in the chat from Malice08. Alex, what is the most embarrassing chess memory you have?
Most embarrassing, I think at the time it was pretty embarrassing. One time I was playing the World Under 12 Championships, and I well, okay, how do I begin? So I was playing a game, and the game was, intense. Um, and there wasn't I didn't have that much time left on the clock. And then suddenly, of course, I had a need that needed to be that arguably was even more important than my competitive need at the board, and that was a need to go to the bathroom. And unfortunately, in the tournament, this was in Spain, they had these like little porta potties. If you guys have ever been to, like, I don't know, I see them sometimes in like festivals and things like that. You see these kind of plastic uh, things, look like a telephone box or something. They're
I
tiny,
think they understand.
and these things anyway. So there was only these, and there were only a handful. I mean, there were hundreds upon hundreds of children. So what could possibly go wrong when your only toilet is that? And I just remember, keep in mind now, this was at this point, 25 years ago. So memory's a little hazy, but my recollection of it is I went into the porta potty and I did my business, number two, and then and then
Thanks for the
yeah.
clarification.
And then what happened? Well, it could have been number one. They had nothing else. So everybody was going in there. And I thought everything was fine. I thought, I've done the procedure, right? As they say these days, and everything's gonna be fine. But then when I came back, I couldn't help but notice, like, as I was walking back towards the board, like, that there was um uh, a certain, I don't know, difference in how I was kind of walking, and the feeling, like the sensory experience had changed for me prior than before. I wasn't feeling that lightness that you typically expect after you do this. And instead I was feeling a kind of a heaviness. And so what happened was I went back to the board, and it kind of slowly clicked with me as the as the smell wafted out, and kind of started to emanate from the region of my buttocks. I started to notice maybe something else had been. Now I maintain
I still don't know what actually happened.
perfect. You'll find out soon enough. We're 10% into the story. No. So I thought what had happened was, I'm pretty convinced what happened is somebody had very, very bad hygiene. And so when I was sat on the actual bowl, I took care of my end of the business, but somebody had left maybe something, and I had accidentally sat on that in some way or another. But in any case, the important takeaway is I came back to the board and I faced a very tricky decision, which is either I go back to the porta potty and I lose a bunch of time in my game, could cost me the entire game, could cost me the game. I had a fine position, so it could cost me the game. or I sit and I persevere. And I sat, and my opponent kept shooting me these dirty, dirty looks, like, you animal. And I just sat there stone faced. And actually, interestingly, probably unrelated, but I did offer a draw shortly after, which was quickly accepted. So that was that. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was an embarrassing experience per se, but it was definitely an experience. I was 12, you know.
Males, thank you very much for your question.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm glad we got to hear the story. Now back to the game.
Which one was yours, Fiona? Well, you have one.
No, when I read the question, I was thinking nothing that springs to mind. If I think of something, I'll let you guys know. This is this liquidation. Okay, Levon has worked his way to d4.
I think you are finally getting your
My liquidation.
Yeah. I think if knight takes d4, bishop takes, maybe king f3. Bang, 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 bang. Wait, not yet. Boom, boom, and then draw for on the 37. And I was one move away from the perfect guess. And yeah, it could actually, 37 is looking good. What was your number?
42.
42, okay. If it's like they can't offer a draw before move 40, then you're in good shape.
Yeah. But I don't think there is. Thanks for the story, says Must Block.
No problem. I have a few others actually from that tournament alone. One involving me breaking down crying, but we'll get into that some other time.
I actually thought that's where you were going with the story. Yeah, Hikaru is thinking here. I think he will just take on d4, surely. What else? Could he be... No, the pawn endgame, surely there can be no risk there.
Yeah, I think we're moving towards a draw here. It's hard to keep the game alive, right? No matter what you do.
Yeah.
No, it's just very solid position for both players, not many pieces. And Levon is kind of saying, you know, look, let's go. Let's just swap
Shake
everything
hands.
off and go home.
I can't believe you told that. I don't think I'd ever even heard that story until now.
Maybe not, no.
I can't believe, I mean, what, 6 years we've known each other, and you saved it until now to share it with me and 5,000.
There are many sides to me, Fiona. What can I say? You know, and that was one of the...
My most, I don't know, my most embarrassing, I'm sure I have many embarrassing stories full stop, but at the board, I'm sure I also have comes really...
You're always very kind of well behaved.
I also, yes.
Don't have any, like in general, I mean, you don't really have any enemies in the chess world, or like you get on.
Not that I know of.
No.
Like when they find my body and they come asking you, did she have any enemies?
No, I just mean like that there are stories. I think you shared a story before. I won't name names, like of somebody literally peeing in the actual hall of the tournament.
Sufficient material is, yeah, somebody did that actually. I wasn't there, but locking the keys in the car and then turning up late for commentary, and I mean late by what, 2 hours? Pretty embarrassing. Yeah, no, I'll think of it, guys. Okay, if something comes to mind, give us an embarrassing story. You probably know. I have this. My brain has this. I think it's a good trait. My brain remembers all the good times, but all the bad times it just kind of blurs out of my of my memory.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's one. No.
There was one. I mean, I don't know if it's embarrassing.
Which one are you thinking?
Well, when I was playing, I think it's kind of funny. It's not so much embarrassing, but I played Gibraltar one year, and it's not at the chessboard, it's at the blackjack table, but maybe people will enjoy it anyway. I'd had a few drinks, too many. I was much younger, and I was just discovering blackjack. And I was in a rush. I just wanted to play, play, play. And at some point, I was under the impression that they wanted to kick me out, which in hindsight, they didn't want to kick me out. They were just closing the casino. But I was kind of not very happy to stop playing. Um, and someone, I don't even remember the story, but my friend who was there with me told me. Anyway, they eventually told me, look, if you don't leave, we're going to call the police. And I said, if you don't let me play, I will call the police. And the reason it's my best friend who was there with me, he said to me the next day that it was the only time in his life he'd been embarrassed. So yeah, I was a bit embarrassing, a bit funny, a bit, you know, you can't fire me, I quit. Meanwhile, Hikaru is still thinking, I can't believe we're being given all this time to share our stories.
I hope that we haven't just okay,
No, I think nothing. Yeah. Chat would let us.
But I think you don't. I think, and we'll drop it now. But I think the thing is, you don't really embarrass too easily, in general. Like maybe in some spots, but not like a kind of comedic embarrassment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some people just have like.
I embarrass the people around me more than I embarrass myself. And we are now going down that line. If Levon has seen enough, he will simply capture here. He might not have a choice actually, because this pawn is under attack. The knight could jump here.
Yeah.
I think this is heading.
I mean, there's still room for Levon to go horribly wrong. I don't think he'll do it, but this would be like amazing turnaround here out of the blue. Knight takes f5 is the last trick in the position because of this trick here, g4, pushing the king back, and then you pick up the rook on e4. So that's Hikaru's last hope, but it really would be nothing short of a miracle for Levon to overlook that, and that is why we are almost certainly going to get that final exchange of the remaining pieces. And if you go g4, there's going to be knight takes g4. So even that option is also not on the cards. So it really is down to exchanging everything.
I mean, that Levon gets a little too ambitious. And by the way, Nicola is in the chat. Good to see you, Nicola. Good to see so many. You know, I always appreciate when I'm here. There are not many people in the chat that I know personally. But you know, when I say, oh, what was this name when the chat got me, and they remember, and it's like there are many names, you know, that you recognize, of course, over time. So I like this little community. Yeah. What I would like, if Levon could get ambitious, because if he was going to take, he would have taken already, surely. Do you think we could see a last-minute blunder?
I think that this one, I mean, if we compare it to, say, the first game where Hikaru slipped up at the end, there were a couple of big differences. One, it was a little bit rarer, and the other thing is he was under huge time pressure. He had seconds on the clock. I think with so many minutes on the clock, it's hard to believe that Levon is going to.
Yeah, and now, well, the liquidation is. Well, how many moves did
I had said 37.
One more, maybe.
Right here, a4. Come on, make that draw for. Come on, come on.
Maybe 42, no. Alex.
No, come on. No.
Is it? Wait. Am I gonna be off?
I think you're gonna be right. I think.
What happened, guys? If I get it right.
No. 40.
Is it actually 40?
That's what's on the thing, but I don't know. I guess so.
They had moved further. Okay, anyway, let's move on from this game where, to be honest, not too much happened. Elsewhere, Jan Nepomniachtchi, I saw it. Jan Nepomniachtchi beat Lenier with the black pieces. Maxime and Alireza made a draw. Let's go to Wesley. So I didn't find it that funny.
I don't know why I found it funny. Maybe it brings back memories of that Thai boxing class. Have you ever told your
No, my prowesses.
yeah, shared your your prowess on
But
the
it's
Thai
nothing. The
boxing?
problem is just a picture, and I'm actually too embarrassed. Alex and I did a bunch of Thai box. What's it? Muay Thai
Yeah.
lessons. And in one, we were standing like with our tutor or whatever coach.
He forced us. He forced us to like stand with
And
like
it's
a
one of my
fighter's pose.
most. I look like I just did a number 2 in my pants or something. I don't know. It's yeah, it's not my best photo. I don't think any sort of fighting is my strong
Yeah.
point.
And this is why, like, you're very much not a fighter, either in personality or like some like affinity for things like
No.
Thai boxing or whatever. Because nowadays, so many people are doing, different stuff, whether it's things like that or jujitsu or taekwondo, you name it. Um, but yeah, but
A
you
peaceful,
fight only on the
only
64
on the
square.
checkpoint, exactly.
But you're not very peaceful there, actually. So.
No. Um, Alex, what is going on here? Material is even, but I'm looking at this king on c1, and I am very concerned for Wesley. The king cannot run anywhere. The queen is controlling b1, the rooks are controlling the d file. But it looks like rook a8 was not the best. It looks like such a natural move. What should Prague have done?
Yeah, I mean, it seems hard to understand. Okay, rook d8 definitely makes sense. Double up the rooks, look for rook d2. That's where my eye would also go to. But even the computer, I mean, it's not too reliable because it says first rook c8 gives a big advantage, but then the evaluation bar starts to change. So I'm not too sure. Let's say, for example, you sat around and you waited. How is black going to build this up? I mean, computer suggests queen g6. Every move seems very kind of moves
That's
that
true.
very, very difficult to understand what exactly is going on. So definitely no blame on Prague here. Blame is can't fault Prague for going for the natural doubling up of the rooks here. Now rook f1, queen g5, and white's king manages to escape. But these positions are always, well, I was going to say they're always very scary for white, but it's not like black's king is ideal either.
I'm seeing, I mean, the engine is saying, oh, and Nicola, thank you so much for the 10 gifted. Once again, good to see you, Nicola, one of the very few people in the chat that I have met in person. Maybe him and Truth, probably the only two I have met in person. I was gonna say, I was shocked that Queen f3, the only move. I didn't know that that was so obvious, but played by Wesley. For the commentators, thank you, appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Nicola.
Why did the queen have to go to f3? Because it has to keep an eye. No,
Did it have to go to f3?
it
Was
had
that
to go to f3.
probably because it's funny, actually? I think it's a very sneaky trap. So if you go somewhere like here, I think you get rook d1
Let's
check.
see it.
So let's say you go queen e3. I know, okay, it's just taking the pawn. I actually thought that this was a trick. Like you take like this, take like this, take like this, and win the queen. That's what I thought was going to be the solution. But the computer points out that actually it doesn't work because after you take here, if I go, say, bishop takes, in this position, I can just, for example, move my queen first. So you have to go rook takes, and then knight takes d1 actually defends the queen. So the whole tactic fails. So I think the reason why is not so flashy. It's just that after takes, you would lose this pawn and be in some trouble in this endgame without the queens without the queens on the board. There's rook d2. Maybe if I scoop up this pawn, this one is going to march forward. So it's getting very messy.
Prague has very little time left. He gives another check, but the computer is starting to like white. The king will be a lot happier on a1 than it was on c1. I'm shocked that Wesley hasn't played yet, but he must be considering blocking the check with knight e4. And suddenly, I mean, the black king also not the safest.
No, I think I would expect that we're going to get king a1 rather than put a bunch of pieces, keep the king on a light square, put the knight on the light square, and have this bishop here potentially torment you. I think Wesley is going to take the risk. Yeah, the king here might get caught up in some back rank mate ideas, but overall, it's an achievement to bring it away from c1, where it's where it can get attacked from in many different ways. Now it can only really be targeted, say, in a couple of different ways.
I have a feeling that Wesley might turn this one around completely and win. I feel like he has such a big time edge, and I wouldn't be comfortable at all playing just on, seconds with this king out in the open. Very brave decision. He goes to grab that pawn, but I guess knight e4 is coming, and that knight is eyeing up f6.
Yeah.
Very, very dangerous. When is my next tournament? The Chess Olympiad in September in Budapest, which starts in what? Just under a month, I think. First round on the 11th September. So how do you defend here? After knight e4, does white already have a concrete threat? Let's say black does nothing. Oh, that is a concrete threat if I've ever seen one. Okay.
But there's a beautiful line here that the computer is showing. If, let's say, black, apparently in this position, black's best move is, and pretty much only move to stay in the game, is here. And now the computer is serving up this move, knight d6, which seems an untouchable square because the rook and the queen are covering it. And you're also giving up this rook. So, I mean, if Wesley so finds this, it will be mind-blowing. We still have absolutely no idea why it actually works. Let's try and figure that out.
Well,
let's say if you take here, I go queen d5 check, and wherever you run, there is some problem or another. If you step up here, you start getting checked on e7, and if you go here, there's knight f7 check, king has to move. Now you take, and apparently here, this exchange actually opens up a little bit more of attacking opportunities. But this is, I mean, this is crazy. And to be honest, the computer is even changing its mind and saying this position is basically still equal. So maybe there isn't anything there, but in any case, what are the odds that the game will actually go like that? Funnily enough, though, this is the position I'd be blown away if Wesley plays knight d6.
If Wesley plays knight d6, it will be the most impressive move I've seen in the tournament so far. I haven't seen all the games, but I think knight d6 is truly stunning.
And Wesley is also a pretty pretty cautious player. So if he throws in this move knight d6.
Okay, I guess the queen takes is easy to see. You cannot take because the rook is hanging, and rook takes, I guess, runs into queen f8.
Yeah, probably. Queen f8 followed by rook e7, and it's
so the main thing that you need to figure out is this line here, right? This queen d5.
Yeah, but this one is
it's tough.
It's very tough. Well, I think it's two things. It's judging this, which apparently this position here is maybe ever so slightly better for white, but that's really hard to judge.
Queen f6 also threatens a mate on b2.
Yeah, queen f6 and puts pressure on the knight, hits this. Now you apparently have to find like some sequence like this, check, king f8, knight e6 check.
Yeah,
I mean, what's I think the whole point of all of this analysis is that by the end of it, you've maybe been able to pick up a couple of pawns and get a position that is roughly still equal, but maybe a bit more chances for white. That is, I mean, but we are what? We're 10 moves deep into some crazy variation, all for what? For a tiny edge in a rapid game? It would be mind-blowing if that was found. And it instead, actually, Wesley plays rook d1, which the computer doesn't like at all. So Pragnananda suddenly putting the squeeze on. There's a big problem, which is
a back rank.
That back rank problem. Pragnananda.
That came. I didn't pay attention for 1 second. What happened here?
Wesley played rook d1, super normal looking move, just challenging for the file. But suddenly, when there's only one rook on the file, White's queen gets overloaded.
Wow.
You know, because in this position here, White's queen is tasked with the defense of the two pieces here, rook on d1, knight on e4. And this is what Pragnananda is combining with the fact that the White king has no real route out of the back rank because the bishop covers this square. So Pragnananda, incredible awareness.
There I was saying the king would be so much happier on a1.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Wow.
Yeah, it's a real pity for Wesley because he seemed to have the situation under control, and now
I'm looking at the tournament standings. Both players didn't have a great start. Pragnananda on 2 points, Wesley on 3, but it looks like Prag will probably get his first win here.
What's nasty as well, I was thinking, what happens if you give this check? And I actually saw a nice line that if you go here, White has a beautiful saving move with knight h5 check. Because if queen takes, rook takes rook, the queen is no longer guarding the rook. And if you go something like this, now White can get organized. Let's say queen f3 or queen b7 check, or even take this pawn with perpetual. So White would avoid danger. But in this position, Black actually goes bishop g8, covers the check, still covers this. And what sucks from White's perspective is if you take here, I'm not going to take back this knight. I'm going to pick up this rook and then take your knight. And Pragnananda is very sharp in these spots. So I think he will see that bishop g8 is the way to go. And oh, wow. So Wesley actually plays the most resourceful move.
Let's see. The moves are coming in fast. And we're going to an endgame. Interesting.
Well, yeah, he keeps some chances alive. He's down a pawn. Down a pawn, and usually when you have the bishop, it's a little bit better than the knight because the bishop can cover the whole board faster than a knight. So odds are.
But let's go back for one moment because I think now this endgame will go on. So what was the win here for?
Outrageous computer move here for a win. I'm really struggling. Like it's just king h7 and. Is it like Zugzwang? I think it might literally be Zugzwang.
Oh my god.
Maybe that's what's going on. I mean, white is no, surely not. Oh my god, if knight f4, this is the point. Queen c6. I mean, chess is outrageously difficult sometimes. Offering up the queen, if you take the queen, it's going to be checkmate. And so you have to do something else.
You have to keep an eye on the rook.
So you have to keep an eye. Yeah, queen h5, exactly. Black keeps on hounding. It's like those tactics positions we sometimes speak. And now if queen f3, this is just beautiful. Queen e3. And the queen actually finally lands.
Wow.
Keep on doing this same trick, offering herself as the sacrifice.
Then the knight is
and if queen h5, you can even... You cannot... You actually cannot take because of this, but rather queen c1, and it is at this moment that Wesley So would have retired from chess. We nearly witnessed Wesley So's retirement if Pragnananda had actually found this. But I mean, if Pragnananda had found that, yeah, it would just be
outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, there would be certain people would be active on Twitter, you know, after that. It's crazy.
What do you think? Do you think Prague is gonna win this, or do you think it's gonna be a draw?
I think what Wesley will want to do is set up some kind of a fortress, meaning you know, let's say that you had these pawns gone off the board. Then Wesley could set up some way of some arrangement with his pieces that would prevent black from making progress. So maybe, for instance, you put your knight on f2, you
Mhm.
cover these squares, you cover this one with your king, you cover like all of the major squares, and you say, okay, black's king cannot go any further. But that is really hard to set up here because there's pawns on both sides of the board. It's I don't know for sure if you know, we can show it actually, like something like this, say bishop here and knight f2. This is what I mean, where the knight is covering these squares, the king is covering this one. But white can just sit around and wait. Black can sit around and wait. And the question is, can black break this configuration or this fortress? So for instance, white can go knight d3, because if you ever go here, right now there's this check, but even if there wasn't, I could go back and I'm covering every square with my pawn and my knight and my king. So all of these squares are covered. So black's king gets pushed back. And that's what's meant by like a fortress, like a defensive, like a bunker that you cannot break through. If these pawns were gone, it would be straightforward because white could say you cannot break this construction and it's a draw. But with the pawns here on the board, black is probably going to have some opportunities, but it still looks good for the drawing chances if white goes in that direction. But he doesn't. He goes knight d5, takes a more aggressive route, plants the knight on c3, and now has moved the knight
now
to
the king is in.
I liked more this idea. Put the knight on f2. But Wesley is going a different direction. The king has made progress, and the king wants to go to h3.
Suddenly looks very dangerous, especially with this bishop also matching. This square could always be useful. We're very far from a scenario where it matters, but this looks very, very, very scary. Are you gonna lose this pawn probably by force, I guess?
I think if you lose it though, I think you're really in trouble unless there was some way, like for example, right? Let's say white just sits and waits, lets this happen, king here, and lets this happen, and white could go knight f4, right? If I could just never move again, you would make a draw because the king is currently stuck. But the problem is I'm going to have to move something. If I ever move my knight, then the king will run out that way. If I move my king up, the king will run out this way. And if I move my king down, the king goes here. So white is very close, but there's no way to actually keep this this setup, which means that if black wins the pawn, I think he wins the game. So white is going after that pawn. A knight here, and now black shifts over his attention. And one of the problems actually that if you ever get a spot where you're facing knight versus bishop, one of the problems is the bishop can very easily just skip a move. You know, it just shuffles around, it can skip a move. The knight, it has to do this dance where it's on a dark square, then it goes to a light, then to a dark, then to a light. So imagine now I'm moving, I'm trying to skip a move. Suddenly I run into problems like this. More problems for the knight than for the bishop.
There is a lot of questions in the chat. Are all the games done? No, there is one more game, a big one. Hikaru will be black against Jan Nepomniachtchi. I want to say it starts in 25 minutes, but it feels like then it would be a longer break than usual. So have the games just ended faster? Am I confused? I don't think I think the game will start 25 minutes from now. I feel like usually there's less time in between the games finishing and the next one starting. This is day 2. Tomorrow is day 3, the final day of the Rapid, and then Thursday and Friday we have 2 days of Blitz to look forward to. I have to say I'm always especially excited for the Blitz action, so I hope to see many of you guys then. Meanwhile, Prague is jumping around. How is Hikaru doing in general? Not that great so far, but the tournament is still young. He's on -1. So 1.5. No, 2 out of 5. I think the last game against Nipper was quite important. Yesterday, Hikaru also started with half point out of the first 2 games, but then he was able to beat Fabi in game 3. And Hikaru actually, I think he hasn't played either Wesley or Prague. and Linear. So I think on paper, I could be wrong, but I think his 3 opponents tomorrow are 3 of the lower rated. Of course, everyone is a fantastic player in this tournament, but I think on paper tomorrow is the easiest. They would know, no disrespect, of course, to any of his opponents. Wesley, he is holding on, and more than just holding on, he has eliminated one of those H-pawns.
Yeah. Still, though, looks a little bit scary, but it looks like the worst of it is over for sure.
I mean, I would still be terrified with these pawns.
I think what Wesley is hoping for is to meet this attack with either of these moves, and then after this
Trap
one
the
drops,
king.
yeah, so like you get this position, and once the pawn on b4 is saved, things are not so terrible, because hopefully this one and this one cannot go anywhere. So how is black actually going to make progress? I mean, I would probably play, I was going to say I would go knight d4 to just even kill this off, but this is not much of a threat. And I think probably what Wesley is looking to do here is maybe chase this pawn a little bit, try to get it to move. Is there any advantage to that? Like say knight f7, target it, force it onto a light square, and then put the pawn on h4. I'm not sure. Another option actually is just to play a move like h4 here. I was thinking, like, can you not just draw like this? No, you can't, because white gets there, black gets there and stops. My idea was, I was just hoping to get some situation like, let's say this, and I was thinking that this would be equal, but white does not get this. So Wesley still needs to be a bit careful. After king b5, he actually has played the idea that that we just showed there, and it turns out that h4 is actually a mistake, but
so is h5.
Yeah, but Pragnananda does not capitalize on it.
Just wanted to highlight Starnok, not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but saying that computer line was insane. Glad to see, we got to see it with explanation. I think he means this, what was it, king, the line with the where you keep chasing the queen.
Yeah,
what did it
queen,
say? King h7
queen c1, ending in
some,
queen c1 checkmate.
yeah, but it started with an obscure move, right? Like king h7 or something.
But I don't like this person's, you know, what he or she is insinuating, right? That we would not have solved this without the assistance of the engine. I think that we would have eventually, it might have taken a few seconds longer, but we would have identified the path, you know? No?
Probably. No, I have to say it's also one of the most beautiful lines that I have seen in this tournament.
It's
so,
like textbook, right?
Yeah,
It's
really
the kind of thing you'd see
stuff.
in some Mark Dvoretsky book to torture everyone.
Yeah. Exactly. Meanwhile, this is back in drawing waters. I'm never sure like how easy is it. Let me see first of all, is there, okay, there is one more game still going, but Nordibek is a queen up by the looks of it against Fabi. Maybe we switch there. It still looks like, because I can't, I'm gonna switch Jaren if you hear me. Because if those pawns, oh, but they go, I thought the black pawns were going this way, but they are going this way. Still, I think this position, even if it's completely over, I feel like there's a bit more I mean, it's more rare, right, to see 2 queens on the board with the possibility, 3 queens on the board with the possibility of a force. So let's just see, is Nordibek going to convert this cleanly?
I mean, also, I don't think you really need to defend yourself that much, right? Like, guys, you know, it's unjustifiable to look at the position with 3 queens on the board, because there's a knight, a bishop, and 2 pawns on the other board, and we gotta look at that one. Yeah, no, this one is really kind of interesting, and it's the kind of position where you know, with
Mistakes could
seconds
still
on the
happen.
clock, with seconds on the clock,
Absolutely.
stranger things have happened. And already this move, Queen C7, is apparently not the most precise way. I mean,
There is only one winning move now, Queen F2.
Queen F2. Yeah, it's so tempting to just give a check on F4, for example.
Yeah.
But Queen F2 is
Yeah,
the
okay, I'm
only.
glad
Yeah.
we came here. I was trying to justify it because I saw the bar was saying plus 11, but I think it's well,
Oh,
oh. Yeah, Nordic.
was it Norderbeck who had the extra queen? Yeah, who has
Yeah.
the white pieces, of course. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, he could
That's crazy that he took so quickly, right? Rather than running out the last few seconds of the clock. I'm a bit surprised.
panic gets to all of us, and here surely, I mean, there can be no chance to ever
No.
win this. I mean, with even
No.
material,
I mean, if you can even have to
you
be
can
careful,
lose it,
right?
yeah.
As white, because if you
Only
block,
move. I don't
yeah.
know how obvious King.
I think it is because basically it's the only way to keep the queens on the board. Because
Uh,
if you go block with the queen or king g3, there's queen d3 check, and the king and pawn endgame is lost, and that's why the computer was saying king g5 only move.
I see precise knock, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but feels good seeing GM's blunder +7 positions. I have to say, when I commentate or just watch for fun, of course I feel some empathy for the players, but I also really often feel like, I'm glad they are just human after all. Makes me feel a little bit better about my numerous blunders, and this game has ended in a draw. Don Esperin, thank you so much for having been here. Have a very good night. Greetings to India, and we are going to return to this endgame, which is still very much alive. Some pawns have come off, so Prague now with that extra B pawn.
Yeah.
Suddenly it becomes relevant that this bishop matches the color.
Yeah, but
Otherwise you could sacrifice the knight.
there's a trick though. The problem is now it's very much a draw because basically the knight goes, let's say, here, and if you ever move the king, then you sacrifice. This is the trick, and so black is stuck because you cannot. Yeah, the king has to stay, and what the king is hoping to do is, okay, now let's say I go something like this, and I like this is what. No, but even here you can't. Yeah, it's always going to be the same thing.
So this should be heading to a conclusion now, right?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and white can even shuffle the king and just basically saying there is zero chance, and both players know this. So I think that it's going to be a draw pretty soon.
Okay, so that game, when it ends, is going to conclude this round with once again 4 draws. If this one does indeed end in a draw, and here it comes, white is going to pick up the last pawn, and we'll see a handshake here on move 85. There was a question earlier, who was closer? I think I was definitely closer, but I wanted to check the exact 41. Missed by 1.
Yeah, so we draw. I missed by 1 the first.
It's
and then
unbelievable that both games we came within 1 move.
Yeah, that is actually crazy.
Predicting. Code 1X, what were the results today? So Hikaru in this 5th round drew against Levon Aronian. The only decisive game was a Jan Nepomniachtchi win against Linnea Dominguez, which means that Jan has now joined MVL in the lead. And Nepo, well, he is none other than Hikaru's next opponent. That game will start in 14 minutes from now, 10 minutes past the hour. We're going to go on a short break, and we'll see you on the other side of this for the last game of the day.
See you soon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz event. Today has been a slow start for Hikaru. We unfortunately lost the first game to Alireza. He just drew against Levon. This is the 3rd and final game of the day, and he's playing Jan Nepomniachtchi. And Alex, these two just faced off a few days ago in the speed chess championship quarterfinals.
Yeah, and there Hikaru steamrolled Jan in the bullet portion, and that really is actually, I think, what Hikaru said was very honest. He referenced Magnus Carlsen's sort of
Prediction.
statement
Yeah.
before their encounter that Jan had a best at 5% chance of beating Hikaru. But the reason for that prediction, that harsh 5% figure, is because of Hikaru's dominance in the bullet portion. That's not going to play as much of a role here. It could go down to the wire, and maybe that extra pace that Hikaru has with seconds on the clock will prove will prove decisive, but probably not. Right now, the biggest factor is the fact that Jan Nepomniachtchi is the one with the white pieces. So the question is, will he push?
Not only with the white pieces, he's also one of the two tournament leaders together with MVL. So I think he will definitely look to push. I mean, I'd be shocked. These two have made some quick draws in the past, but I think mostly online. I expect a big fight here. I was looking, is Jan sporting a new kind of haircut? Or is it just a wild hair day? Not unlike your own hair, sort of at the front.
He's got the fade, he's bringing the style. It is what it is. And he's also bringing the guns with this camera angle. Jan looks like he's ready for that
I mean, this
checkboxing
camera
heavyweight.
angle has gotten me for years. I can't believe they still use these wide lens, or whatever is going on. But long may it continue. Always puts a smile on my face. And we have one c4 on the board.
Yeah, it's the kind of move you play when you want a game, right? You don't want to go into the trenches of 30 moves of theory. So you play the 1c4. It's called the English opening, and it's an opening that often leads to a lot of pieces being left on the board. So maybe what you're saying, Jan came to fight.
And why wouldn't he? I mean, he is white. He must be feeling confident. He's had a great start to the tournament. I think in general, we haven't really seen any quick draws in the tournament, It is a rapid event. The players are there to fight, to have some fun, to fight for the top prizes, of course. So let's see. Hikaru taking a rather solid approach here.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, why wouldn't Jan fight? I don't think Jan with the white pieces fears anyone. If he does fear someone, it's that pesky man from Norway. I think both Hikaru and Jan are united in their fear when they're facing Magnus Carlsen. But other than that, the top players are really not fearful of anyone. And yeah, we see this kind of slow play unfolding where White has a little bit more space here. So Jan is saying, okay, maybe in the long run, the fact I have these 2 pawns here, you have these 2 pawns, the pawn on c6 is a little bit less forward. Jan is going to try to make something of that, but it's a slow burner. All the pieces are on the board and fight lies ahead.
Hikaru, again, the pieces are a bit more cramped. Can you tell us a bit about where they usually develop to?
Yeah, so it's kind of like you set up this little triangle formation here, and you might feel the squeeze in the long run, but Black wants to break free from that jail sooner or later. And how you're going to do that is either with a move like potentially b5, breaking here, or potentially e5. Now, the fact that Hikaru has played bishop b4 maybe speaks to less of the chance of e5, but now queen e7, so that again supports this possibility of e5. Because the big problem with this setup is it's really solid. It's like you're building a wall, but there's one guy who suffers as a result of this wall, and it's this bishop on c8 stuck behind the pawns of the same color. So that's Nakamura's strategic problem to solve, and he'll probably do it with a move like e5 if the moment is right.
I see that Philipar is saying Nepo was surprised just now. I actually missed it. I don't know after which move. Was it after Queen e7 or what was the move that took him by surprise? That's the one where the engine did ever so slightly, but the speed at which Hikaru plays this, let's quickly check the openings book. Yeah, I mean, castling is the main move, but Queen e7 is the second most common. So I don't think it's anything to be shocked about, let's say.
No. I think Jan sometimes is prone a little bit to maybe putting and making an expression, but there's nothing.
I
There's
think we
nothing
have
too
the
much about it.
two players here who make the best
Yeah,
faces and the most faces.
yeah, yeah. They wear their heart on their sleeve in this respect. Yeah.
Both now looking away to the side. Is there? Okay, so rook e1 played, and I guess the question at every turn is, are we ready for e5 or not?
Yeah, and it looks like here it's a good moment. It's a bit scary when White's rook is barreling down here on the e file, what we call an X-ray, X-raying, because there are pawns in the way, but the rook still has that vision, and you never know when that's going to be a factor. So the kind of things that Hikaru has to think about is, what if e5, a pawn break, meaning the pawns make contact, is met with e4? And the problem is, you don't want everything to start getting exchanged off here, because suddenly a rook is worth a lot less than a queen, right? So black is the one that has to respond. It doesn't matter that the knight is hanging. Black's queen is the biggest priority there. So this is the kind of thing that Nakamura has to watch out for. But at the same time, you could do something like takes, and keep the e-file closed, and black would have achieved a dream situation. You can imagine this would be the absolute dream, because now the knight has a wonderful square. The bishop is hit.
A
If the bishop
wonderful
moves,
time.
rook d8, and I'm out. I'm out. You KO'd me with just a few
Just
words.
ones.
Yeah, with just a handful of words you can. Up, and
Is
we
played.
do see e5. And again, Hikaru's goal is this bishop coming to life by removing this pawn. The bishop is now looking to step into the game sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I feel this is a big moment here. I think the fact that Hikaru was able to get an e5, and we have the help, of course, of the engine to let us know this is fine. I think it's a great sign. What do I make of Hikaru's body language? Looks very relaxed right now. As we can see, he hasn't spent too much time yet, so he has looked at these sort of positions before, of course, but even most likely this exact position. He was the one who decided to play Queen e7.
I mean, I still, to be honest with you, don't really know what the whole liquidation meta is about with this liquidation and all of this, but I will speak of, traditional liquidation, and that is everything gets exchanged here, and now knight takes d5. It could well be that Hikaru has actually seen all of this. The point is, you take with the knight so that your bishop is defended. Now pawn takes, bishop takes, and queen takes d5. And you do get a lot of material off the board. And even though the computer says fractionally better for white, I mean, we're in drawing territory. So maybe Hikaru is he's ready to just end the day, solid draw, and he's looked at something along these lines.
Yeah, and well, let's see. D takes, knight takes. Are we actually going down this road?
We could well be.
Do you think you just predicted the end of the, well, let's say the end of the game? I think if this line happens, which you just showed, I don't think it will be a very long game. Jan doesn't look too happy. He's sort of giving Hikaru that look that we have seen before. I think this is going to be a quick draw, actually.
Well, the only thing that can be said is that if somebody is fractionally better, it is white, because they have this 4 pawns on the king side versus 3. So you could get a situation, let's say takes, where in the long run, let's say you sit around and you don't do too much, something like this, and let's say you start to drive these pawns up the board and maybe create some opportunities. That's a lot more scary. These pawns barreling up the center is more scary than these ones. This majority here, this 3 versus 2, which is going to take a while to get rolling. So Jan still has some reason to be, you know, to press,
Of
to
course,
try and
yeah.
generate some winning chances. But I think if somebody is happy with the result of the opening, it's Hikaru.
Yeah, I think, this game, maybe I was too quick to call it a quick draw. We'll see what happens here. But I think Hikaru has very close to equalize out of the opening.
Yeah, and you see Jan shaking his head just
Yeah.
there.
I think this body language we've seen many times before. Like Jan has that face of, okay, this is not what I was hoping for. I am not. I also think neither player really wants to offer a draw. Like I think Hikaru with the black pieces, he understands only white can be marginally better. So I think game will last maybe because we neither player, wants to make that first step to actually verbally offer a draw, but it's clear from Jan's body language that he doesn't feel like this is a game where I have great chances to create something.
No, for sure. We didn't predict actually.
The move number
No. And now
28, my lucky 28.
you're gonna predict here.
It's probably gonna be less, I think, though.
I don't know. 28, I don't know.
Hey, I say 28. What do you say?
44.
44.
44.
You're insane. Okay, we will see, guys. You heard the man. Bishop c4. Where do I put this bishop? Just on f5?
Mm-hmm.
Looks like a good square. And then I would probably quickly play something like h6 at some point, make sure the back rank is secure. What if, because I was just looking at bringing these rooks to the center, but I see the computer mentions a5. Is the idea after a5 to keep pushing or maybe to push b5, or what's the idea?
I think it just ties in well with. I don't think there's anything super concrete. I mean, in some spots you will keep pushing, in others you'll just keep the pawn here because all of Black's pawns on the same color as this bishop. It's nice to shift one to dark square, take control of the b4 square. You never know where you might need it or you might want it to anchor your queen there. You also, in some situations, might want to push b5 and just get all the pawns rolling. So I think it's a multi-purpose move rather than like one very specific idea.
Outrageous Speed is saying Hikaru did reach for that a pawn and then stopped himself, but that is clearly an indication he is looking at a5, which seems to be a fine move. Sometimes it's tough in those spots because you feel like, okay, I have the liberty. A lot would have to go wrong in this position for me to end up in trouble. But then on the other hand, when you have, at least in my case, I don't know if it's, on their level, but in my case, I sometimes lose my footing a bit just because I feel, well, almost anything should lead to a draw, and then I get careless. And
yeah, but these players are extremely careful because they know even one tiny imprecision. These elite players, they're so good at. Obviously, Magnus stands out above the rest, but they're so good at just turning the most minuscule thing into a torture device, basically. And I do wonder actually if one of the reasons why a5 was appealing, it just made me wonder if you go b5 straight away, is there a possibility of this move queen a5 and protecting the bishop this way, because now you cannot take it because of this. So if you wanted to kick the bishop back, but you wanted to avoid this funky defense, maybe you go a5 straight away. But Hikaru ultimately chooses, I think, the most sort of classical way to continue. That's it. Yeah, I'd forgotten it was
human of moves.
Yeah.
Bishop f5. I guess he could still play a5 potentially on the next move, or now that the bishop is gone. Let's say white does what, h3. And I'm just curious, is a5. Oh, already the computer is not the biggest fan.
I think
Oh, I'm jealous. The Backstreet Boys are apparently playing. I love the Backstreet Boys. Sadly, we can't hear the music. Sorry, Alex, you were gonna say?
um no, I was just going to say that maybe a5 here, it's a little bit dangerous because after bishop f5, I think if white now pushes the pawn, here's Hikaru's idea. I'm going to go bishop g4, going to hit this rook, and you cannot play f3 because the pawn is pinned. So actually, I know you were sort of
I was just making a waiting move, but
making
it
a move.
was a very useful
This turns
one.
out to be the best move in the board with a specific idea in mind, and that's I think why maybe a move like queen e7 is a bit more solid, because now against e4 you have ideas like first bishop e6 if you want, because now you can recapture with the queen, but also from e7 the queen covers the d8 square, so you can start to trade
Liquidate.
pieces to start to liquidate, Fiona, you know, and that is that I think that's Hikaru's goal here.
E4 was played here, so allowing bishop g4, rook c1, and the queen drops back. As we can see, the eval bar has inched even closer to that midway 0-0 mark. Hikaru now of bishops.
Yeah.
I think your prediction, Alex, of 44 moves, it's a bit out there. A bit optimistic.
wanted to let you win one.
If I like the Backstreet Boys, check out Dirty Pop on Netflix. Okay, Alex, our next our next has been sorted. Dirty Pop, thank you, Mouse Block. We'll look into it. The bishops are off. And with the bishops being gone, actually maybe well Hikaru is thinking how to recapture. I'm shocked the computer wants to take with the pawn. I think insta take with the queen. But why is there something to be said for pawn takes and creating that isolated pawn?
I think just to avoid white's somewhat very slightly annoying move queen c7, which doesn't seem too scary, but it is a little bit does force a little bit of a passive defense of this pawn, and now white can, you know, grab the open file and maybe enter here onto the 7th rank.
And Hikaru has in fact taken with the pawn.
Yeah, and I guess there's in chess there's a thing called like the principle of two weaknesses, which is if you have two weaknesses, your opponent will usually sort of hit them both, and then you'll get overstretched and things can turn really sour and your position collapses. But if you only have one weakness like this, what's the big deal, right? If white starts to attack this isolated pawn with all the queens and the rooks, while black can just has the same amount of pieces and can just defend it. So I think Hikaru's not worried about one weakness in his position here, especially with such little material on the board.
Yeah, Jan plays rook d1. This time I don't really want to take, because I would love to play this move, but I can't because my pawn would be hanging.
Yeah.
We don't want that, so
I'm curious why, for example, like the computer suggests this move queen f7, c5, h6. They're all very reasonable moves, but I'm just wondering what happens if just rook d7, so that you can start to control the file. This is the move that would seem most natural to me, and it seems that it doesn't have any major problem. We'll see which direction Hikaru goes in, and he does actually play rook d7. He's just looking to exchange a bunch of pieces.
Yeah, I see the chat was still discussing queen takes versus pawn takes. Just to be back, because Chickadee was saying queen takes is a dead draw, but f takes is still dead, but maybe gives a bit of a chance. But I'm with you that allowing this was maybe a little bit more annoying. It's always unpleasant when a queen infiltrates.
I just realized black actually would have this move more so than passive. So I agree with chat that this is just but I mean, we're splitting hairs in a sense. They're both they're both objectively equal, and Hikaru, it's just maybe a question of preference. Maybe Fabiano Caruana just would have taken with the queen. Who knows? I don't think one move is.
Oh, the game has actually ended.
Ah,
Okay, well, oh no.
are
Oh
you
no,
sure?
it hasn't. No, never mind. Sorry, Chad. I looked away and they were both gone, and I thought, okay, we missed the end of the game, but no, they were just happened to both be away from the board. Yeah, I debated myself actually. I thought, how did they? I even thought because the pieces from here look a bit like, at first sight you could think like there's not too many pieces in the center, if you know what I mean. You could mistake those for kings.
Yeah.
Desu wasn't expecting an over the game board today. It is the last game of the day, but tomorrow there will be 3 more rapid games and then 18 games of Blitz, 9 on Thursday and 9 on Friday. So that will be fun. Hikaru is back. Is not looking too stressed or worried. Things here are under control. As Alex mentioned, there is only one weakness. There is this saying about the 2 weaknesses, and there's simply not enough pieces left for Jan to be able to hope to create a second weakness. So this should end peacefully, and my prediction is not too long from now.
Yeah, and another thing that plays in Hikaru's favor, it's very slight factor, but I mean, Hikaru's actually winning the battle for the open file, this open D file, because black wants to go rook here and force white to a decision. And if white is the one who captures, black is the one who has picked up control of the open file. So I think that plays a role in offsetting this slight weakness of the pawn.
So Jan still thinking here. Let me see. I guess we'll stick around here. A bit OP. What's up dog? Have you ever heard?
I've heard of down dog. Downward dog.
From yoga.
Yeah, yoga, but up dog.
Yeah, I'm running out of things to say. I don't know. What is Jan thinking? Oh no, is it something I shouldn't have said?
I think people they're happy with the way things are playing out here. What up, dog?
Oh. Not bad, actually. No. Not bad. Chat 1, Fifi 0. I enjoyed this one. It was very well
subtle.
Very subtle. Very, very subtle. Yeah, I wish Jan would make a move to deliver me, to free me. Maybe what we can do, can we keep Hikaru's game on the live board and do a little check? I saw the Alireza game against Nordibek looks very exciting, but I'm gonna wait for the green light from the team to move away from here where there's not much. Okay, so we'll keep Hikaru on the live board. We're quickly gonna check in with this exciting position here. Alireza against Nordibek. Alex, what is going on? How did this? Maybe we can very quickly go from the beginning, no?
Okay, yeah. So we have a Sicilian Najdorf on the board, and that starts. This is the move. This A6 move leaves you with this Najdorf, and white goes for one of the systems that's considered the most one of the most aggressive system, with bishop out to G5, and then only after bring your bishop here, pinning the knight, then you play F4, and here black first kicks the bishop back, then goes queen b6, and is threatening this pawn on b2. But White defends it indirectly with this move a3. The point is, by taking control of this square, if you now take, I have knight a4, and it's a weird, well-known trap,
Yeah.
but it's one that has caught out many unsuspecting players. The queen has no escape route. So that's why the pawn is now truly poisoned. After bishop e7, bishop f2, the queen drops back, queen f3, eyeing up the possibility of queenside castle, because these pawns are going to march up the board and try to storm the black king's defenses here. e5, challenging the knight and hitting this pawn on f4. Black is fighting for the center, but does give up this square on f5, takes, and now an interesting idea here. I don't know if this is theory here, but this move d5 very
Like, even if we look at the clocks now, it looks like Alireza played the opening phase probably quite quickly if he still has 20 minutes now.
Yeah, whereas the same can't be said for Nodirbek, who is down to only 12 minutes, but maybe that came in the recent moves. In any case, Alireza just snatched the pawn, and the question is, where is the compensation? Yeah,
yeah.
for that pawn. And I think this last move here, h5, you see the evaluation bar shooting up. I think what was a concern for Nodirbek is that if he didn't play h5, sooner or later, this pawn might march forward, and these pawns could be really strong. But it turns out that the move h5 is a pretty costly waste of time here. White now is able to consolidate, and now black is too afraid to castle kingside, and you cannot blame Nodibek for not wanting to castle when this pawn is now an easy victim. But it turns out that this would have given black some much better chances, with a lot of chances for a powerful attack. Instead, Nodibek maybe went fatally wrong.
An uncharacteristic mistake, actually, by Nordibek, who usually, I think, has very good instincts for these kinds of positions.
Yeah, it's true. He loves these highly dynamic positions, but right now, yeah, after bishop c5, there's rook c4, there's this nasty pin. I
And
don't know
to
what's
see,
going
no,
on.
I'm just gonna click on the clip so we have it. Oh no, why can't I? Why can't I? I'll just download it. The heck
Boom.
with it. Why can't?
They
There you
got
go. It's
Yeah.
downloaded. And after rook c4, yeah, I mean the black king.
Yeah, king has to go to b8, but the problem is, okay, this is the current position. No, king b8, bishop takes, knight takes, and queen e3. The problem is, if you look at the material, white is up a pawn. If you look at the pieces, white has the threat here on this knight. And if you look at the remaining pawns, this one, if black's knight were to, move back, this pawn can be picked up. So it mightn't take so long for Nodibek to be down 2 pawns and not 1. And I think this is why he's really up against it. He has no attack.
Looking
And
very, very bad.
Worst placed pieces down a pawn, exactly.
Let's go back to Hikaru, where one set of rooks has been traded. So after rook d7, Jan played g3. And this is the live position.
Yeah, I mean, not too much has happened. I think it's all going according to plan. And maybe we can expect more trades here, maybe queen d6, queen f6. And at this stage, it's hard for Jan to avoid exchanging the queens. Let's say you try and keep them on the board. Hikaru might continue to insist. And if you want to really keep the queens on the board, first of all, I can just give you a check.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, you would have to do a lot of kind of dancing around to try to keep the queens on the board. And if you get a little bit too cocky and you try to keep the queens on the board at all costs, maybe black will say, okay, I still have a rook and a queen, and I can start to hunt you down with my more active pieces. So I think the queens are going to come off the board in the next few moves. And we see queen d6. I think Jan's going to agree.
Yeah, I was just looking at the camera. Jan didn't look surprised when queen d6 appeared. It was more like, okay, I guess we move on to the next day. I think for Jan also, of course, with white, you always hope to get something. But here, yeah, I think Hikaru did a great job neutralizing his opening.
Yeah, he just out prepared him. I think
Yeah.
he knew all of this. He played it
Yeah.
instantly, and he got a completely equal position with Black
Mhm.
effortlessly, which I think is probably what Hikaru wants to
Mhm.
end the day. He had two blacks today. It's a tough day.
Let me see actually. So Hikaru will have two whites tomorrow. So he will be white against Wesley and white against Prague, black against Lenier. Um, so I think, you know, even if 1 out of 3 today, of course, is not the Hikaru's dream score, far from it. But I think, as we mentioned earlier, on paper tomorrow, he is playing some of the lower rated players in that field. You know, he gets two whites. So I think it was important to not lose this final game against Jan, and especially to do it with such relative ease is always going to be, it's not quite a full point, but it's still a nice little moral boost.
Yeah, and at the end of the day as well, it's not just about how well you play, but how well your opponents play. And I think
I am very gullible. I'm looking forward to seeing the clip actually. I probably actually said the exact words, right?
maybe, yeah, I don't
What's up,
remember.
dog?
I don't remember,
I
but
think
you
so.
probably did. I think you probably would have said exactly that.
And you didn't pick up on it
No, I
either.
had no idea.
Yeah, this one was good actually. I prefer this over this is more sweet.
Yeah. The other one felt they were laughing at us, and this one laughing with us, kind of thing.
Kind of.
Kind of.
Um, I will not get my prediction. This is move 29. I was feeling quite good about my prediction, but I still think that I will be closer than you. What do we have to, what did you say, 44?
Yeah. So it's about move, what, 36 or something?
Yeah, if it crosses 36. But they
Huh?
don't want to offer draws. That's maybe you're gonna edge me out again. Have we watched The Office? Well, I have only seen, we watched the English one together.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the American. I don't know if you have.
I've seen all of the English one, but I haven't seen years and years ago, but I haven't seen more than maybe a couple of episodes of the American one. I don't know. Have you seen even
I
one
think
episode?
none.
No.
No. What yesterday someone was asking what series, what have we been watching? Not so many series. I think the last one we watched was The Gentleman
Mhm.
by Guy Ritchie on Netflix.
There was, yeah, what else there was recent?
I finally, a few days ago, Alex was shocked that I hadn't seen Lost in Translation. So,
I don't think that that is, I mean, like, I don't think that that's a movie where it's like it's shocking not to have seen it. I don't think it's that
no,
huge of a movie. I'm not sure.
I felt like it was
It's a good movie, but I'm not sure that I was shocked.
a little shocking, you see?
Yeah,
A
okay.
little shocking.
Uh,
Um,
but I was actually saying to Fiona, trying to keep going on the Bill Murray bandwagon and suggesting Groundhog Day. So I don't know, chat. What are your opinions on Groundhog Day? Is it a is it a must watch?
and Dina, yeah, that's the one. Another classic. It's one of Jaren's favorites. It has been downloaded, of
Legally,
course, so of
legally,
course legally.
legally, and on your computer. Fiona.
That's not even, no, that's not.
Oh yeah, it's definitely on your computer.
On my computer legally, we
You
bought it
using your hand.
using my credit
Not that
card.
any of this is relevant because fully legally.
Oh. Filmed in my old hometown, says Kajos. What is the old hometown? Groundhog Day. Do you know the city? You've seen it, right? The movie.
Yeah, yeah. I actually haven't seen it in maybe like I barely remember anything. I probably saw it like 15 years ago or something like this.
So what is Woodstock, Illinois?
Yeah,
Interesting.
Bill Murray, you could see like Bill is, Eric phrases it a touch on the aggressive side, but I'm assuming he is not wrong. If you don't like Bill Murray, then you can just GTFO.
Yeah.
Bill
Fair.
is the kind of guy who he's like all great actors. He evokes strong emotion,
Yeah.
So yeah. No, but you really enjoyed the movie
The movie,
actually.
yeah. You
It was,
slept almost the entire way through.
okay, whatever. I'd already seen it. That was the fence.
Yeah, it's funny actually. The first day, because I think, well, the first day I watched like 40 minutes, and it's a sleeper. And Alex slept pretty much through the whole first 40 minutes. So the next day we restarted from the beginning.
Well,
He watched the first 40 and then he fell asleep, and yeah, he never caught up. But you
that's
have
it.
seen the
I
movie
have time.
before.
I have time.
We have a pass pawn while we were talking about Bill Murray. That C pawn became a passer.
Yeah,
Does it give us any chances? I
I
mean, if
mean,
anyone, I'd take black now.
perhaps. What happens if, for instance, something like Rook here? I just wonder though. Yeah, what I was wondering is maybe, with the idea being to push this pawn, and if White has to go passive, maybe some very tiny chances to
Mm.
put some squeeze on. But usually, one of the problems of having this pawn here is that the black king is very airy. So there's going to be more opportunities for some
Mm.
sort of perpetual or some other type of tactic. For instance, rook a6 here invites this setup here. And now, it's difficult. Let's say you start trying to advance this pawn, like, start with checks. Let's say king here, and probably even take it and do something like this. And even as this pawn might start marching forward, I mean, there's all sorts. There's picking this
Mm.
up, so you're going to you're going to end up in a draw
I
one way or
see.
another.
Be Thirsty is saying, does Hikaru have a chance of winning the event? And somebody responded, never the hero, not the rapid part. So the thing about this tournament, which I didn't know until until yesterday, which was before I went live, is there is no separate rapid and a separate blitz. They will all, both standings will be combined into one.
Fiona, looks like the game is over with a threefold
On
repetition
move
on
38.
move 38. So that was a pretty closely contested battle between us on the prediction game, but I do take a narrow but fair victory. Yeah, just a bit.
And
So
yeah, I think we will see. There were questions earlier in the chat. Will we hear from Hikaru? I think we will. I think we can confirm that. And until Hikaru gets here, let's maybe go back to this Alireza game, which has changed a bit and not in the way. Oh, but Hikaru is already here, so let's hear it from him.
that was lightning fast.
Yeah. You're muted.
I'm still muted? No, I should be good
No,
now.
now it's good.
Okay.
How are you? How was the second day? Probably not what you were hoping for, but the last game at least you made it look very, very easy.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there are a couple of things. Obviously, I decided to play the French against Alireza. I mean, kind of like I guess if I were to put it one way, like as I get closer to the end of my chess career, I kind of want to experiment a bit more and have some fun. So I decided to try and play the French. It's got to be the first time that I played it in a serious game in probably like a decade, is my guess.
Wow.
So it's been a very long time. I'm gonna guess that I might have played in the U.S. Championship in, I don't know, like 2015 maybe, or like around that time. So it's been a very, very long time since I played it. I mean, I got a good position out of the opening, but then I put my knight on the wrong square. I went to e7 instead of a5, which was a fairly serious mistake. And then I think I was just basically getting outplayed. I was a little bit worse for much of the game after that. But at some point, Alireza completely let me off the hook, and the game should have ended in a draw. But then, like, I completely lost my mind for, like, I don't even know what reason exactly, but I did lose my mind. Yeah, I mean, somewhere around here, I thought I should be only marginally worse, but I mean, I just didn't really come up with a good plan, and I got into a lot of trouble somewhere around here.
Yeah, I mean, I was very happy when your knight was finally out of h6, and
Well, I mean, I should have gone g6. Bishop f8 was a ridiculous move. I mean, it was just a terrible move. I think after bishop f8, g4 was winning. By the way, I didn't look at it, but I think g4 knight e7 bishop takes h7 was winning. If you go back one move, I think g4 knight e7 bishop h7 was winning, but maybe I'm crazy.
So apparently it matters to play rook takes c8. We actually saw this, like, where there's some crazy line where the rook is hanging on c8. So like you have to take here first, and then there's g4 at knight e7 takes, check, king g8, queen f3, and you're getting
right. But why doesn't this work in the other order?
Because it's a great question, and
no, because the rook.
So if you go g4 here, and now I go, let's say rook takes c1, takes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe. Oh no, you're actually right.
No, there was something.
There was. I felt there was something, but no, you're right. You're right. It works as well.
Yeah, but I mean, I got the sense that Alireza wasn't like super sharp either. And then he let me get to this endgame. I mean, which was just insane of him, and it should have been a draw, and then I just missed. I mean, I literally didn't see bishop b5, which was just terrible by me.
Yeah, let's get to that point. Where? Sorry.
Yeah, like right around here, he played this a6 move, and like I was sure that it would be a draw, and then somehow I didn't see bishop b5. I mean, which is horrible. I didn't see it, but what's I think even worse is that I didn't realize until the very end of the game that I had missed it. Like if you watch the camera, like I had this reaction, like I think right at the end where I had this very confused look, and it's because I suddenly realized I had bishop b5. But to make matters even more comical, I'm pretty sure Alireza didn't see it either, which I mean sort of speaks volumes, I think, about how sort of out of form I think we both were in this game or in this event.
I think we actually picked up even on the exact moment where it felt like, you know, you were not focused on the current position any longer because that endgame was lost. And
yeah, but I mean, it's bad that I didn't see bishop b5 right away, but that's even worse that I only realized it at the end of the game, and then Alireza also didn't see it either, and so like I mean, it's just it was pretty terrible, and then I lost the game. There wasn't much I could do. So that's kind of how it goes. Which of course it's a big disappointment, but that's life.
And then the second game, you repeated this f4 in the Sicilian against Lev.
Well, I mean, after what happened in the first game, I mean, the fact that I didn't see this bishop b5, which I should see, I mean, all the time, basically. I mean, I kind of was just ready to get out of town. I was ready to just like, I lost a lot of my interest in the event, at least for today, after what happened in the first game. Because I mean, to not see that bishop b5 move is just, I mean, really at this level unacceptable.
How do you actually deal with it? Because in that moment, there isn't much time until the next game. So what do you try to do to get over that?
I mean, I think the main thing is you just try to focus on the next game, and more than focusing on the next game, try and play something simple and just play chess basically. And and so I just played something simple, but unfortunately, Lev was happy to go into the end game, which I still was apparently a little bit better in this end game if I hadn't played this e5 move the way that I did. If you just keep going forward. Yeah, like here instead of e5 I go g3. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit better instead of e5. Yeah, we played g3 here, b6, and then something like a4, and I mean maybe I'm a little bit better. I don't know if it's anything special, but at least the game goes on.
Yeah. But suddenly after e5 it's almost white has to be a little bit on the defensive, or you felt everything was still perfect?
I mean, I think it's probably okay, but of course it's not what I wanted. And at this point, it's just make the draw and move on, pretty much.
And then, I mean, not much happened in this game, right? I don't know if there's any.
No, I mean it was pretty dull. Not very exciting at all. Very dull game.
And that left this last round game against Jan. Do you feel, I mean, you guys just played in the Speed Chess Championship. Do you feel that there is an element of Jan, especially with the white pieces, that he wants to get revenge, or do you guys just move on like different tournament, different?
You know, I'm gonna give a little bit of a hot take. Actually, I think I'll give a little bit of a hot take right now, which is that I actually kind of want to get back to playing much more over the board than online, because really I think when you see people in person and you talk to them, it's much different than all the trolls and all the nonsense that happens online, because you know. I feel like there's been this sort of, in a way, manufactured drama based on like tweets by Jan or some of the things, the back and forth. Whereas like when I see Jan in person and we talk to each other, it's all good. Like it's all great. So I actually would say that like I mean it was like the old days when I played Jan. It was just the normal stuff. There was nothing really no like big rivalry or big drama or anything like that. We were just playing chess. So if I would say anything, I think it's that like I mean. I kind of am starting to dislike all the online stuff to some degree, because it's creating all these fake narratives and this fake drama and all this other stuff that's not really good, I would say. So yeah, like there was really there's like no animosity. We just played and yeah, you just talk and that's that.
Actually, how is the atmosphere on site in St. Louis?
The atmosphere is pretty good. What do I want to say is I guess the question. I mean, how much do I want to say or not say? I would just say that, you know, I think that what again, getting back to online versus in person, what people will say online or podcasts or other things versus what they'll say in person, whether it's to me or others, is dramatically different. So I think there's a big separation between like online and sort of in person, whether it's playing, whether it's talking, whatever it might be. So it's quite nice, actually. I mean, I think everybody here is pretty much on good terms overall, so can't really complain. And also, I feel like a lot of players are taking this rapid part very, very casual. Like you're seeing a lot of like sort of weird things happening. Like you're seeing Noterbeck playing like the birds opening. I mean, I'm playing this E4, the Sicilian with F4 on move 2. I mean, you're seeing a lot of wacky stuff. Or Fabiano playing all these kind of random openings with black, trying to create imbalanced positions. So yeah, the atmosphere is pretty good. It's pretty relaxed, I would say, overall, and that's a good thing, certainly. But I would say for myself, just broadly speaking, if I want to start doing better at rapid, I probably have to play more chess and play more of these rapid events, and I don't really intend to. So I don't know if I'll do so great in rapid going forward, but that's how it is.
You did say, right, that rapid is your least favorite time control?
Well, I mean, I think the problem is, you know, I think I'm unique. I'm a great experiment of what happens when someone basically plays online chess a lot. Oh, by the way, quick station break, because there is some lag, right?
A little bit, but it hasn't been.
Yeah, so basically, I just want to take a second to tell you guys that the room that I'm in at the hotel, I'm going to be changing the room, but it's literally like the one spot in the hotel where there's like a dead zone and the Wi-Fi signal doesn't work. So it's literally the only room. So if you come and stay at the Chase Park Plaza, or maybe it's better if you don't stay here, like a certain chess player. But the room that I'm in, which I'll be changing from, it's literally like the only room. So I went out in the hallway, played around with speed tests and checked the Wi-Fi signals, and it's completely fine literally everywhere else. So it should be better from tomorrow at least. But
I'm sorry, Hikaru, but I can't
say?
help picturing you like, you know, back in the days when Wi-Fi wasn't everywhere. And I'm sure you remember the pictures as well when you'd see all these players sitting on the floor outside their hotel rooms.
Yes, the old days for sure. Yeah, so I mean, just for anyone who's saying there's some lag, yeah. What was the question, by the way? I forgot what your question was.
No, I mean, I'd asked about the atmosphere, and this last game just to us looked like good.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Nepo played something that he doesn't normally play, and he confused a move order. He just confused a move order, and once the center is simplified, I mean, I don't think either of us were very excited by the game. It was just a matter of how to make the draw and get out of there as quickly as possible.
Where is the confusion? Where did he mix it up?
Well, I mean, I think he wanted to play something like Rook C1. I think he wanted to go Rook C1 or like Rook C1 and Queen C2 or a slightly different order, just not what he did. And yeah, once I got e5, I mean, everything comes off in the center of the board, and I mean, it's just not exciting. And you could obviously tell by our expressions that I don't think either of us were very enthused.
So that leaves one game, one day of Rapid. Do you feel, are you still looking forward to that, or do you feel you're mostly looking forward to the Blitz?
Well, I think what I would say about this, and kind of what I sort of told myself after the first game today, is that it's very similar to the Speed Chess Championship. And what I mean by that is, in the Speed Chess Championship, I've said this basically probably at least the last 3 years when I played in the tournament. The exception of Magnus, if I keep the match score close in the Blitz portion of 5-1 and the 3-1, and I get to bullet, I'm not behind by a bunch of points, I know that I'm going to win the match because I'm just better than everybody else, with the exception of Magnus and obviously now Alireza. And I would say that I view this event very much the same way, which is it's more about don't do anything stupid, stay within striking distance. And if I'm not able to get it done in the Blitz, so be it. But I do have good chance in the Blitz as long as I'm not too far behind. And so that's really the main thing that I'm thinking about is, tomorrow I have 2 whites, try and play one or two good games, and maybe something will happen. But just try to stay within striking distance so that if I get hot in the Blitz, then I'll do well.
Absolutely. I saw you did not 1, but 2 recaps. Same today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously nobody cares about some stupid tournament here. I mean, who cares about the top players, frankly? It's much more exciting to follow games like Levy's. So I'll be doing a recap of Levy's game, and then probably that'll go up tonight, and then I'll do a recap of my game for tomorrow morning. That'll be the plan. So yeah, I mean, it's I will say, though, it's taking a lot of energy. It's not easy doing multiple recaps a day. It definitely makes it much harder to seriously prepare for these games or this tournament in general. So it's not easy, but at the end of the day, I'm here to have fun, and I have a real job, which takes priority.
Actually, just one question about your preparation. What does your preparation, I don't know how much you can or want to reveal, but for a tournament like this, Rapid and Blitz, what does your preparation look like?
I mean, generally, it's just try to have a few little surprises here or there. I think the one thing is this event is a much slower form of Rapid. It's 25 minutes versus, say, 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So it's a lot slower. And I think from that standpoint, definitely does not benefit me. It's disadvantageous, or it's not advantageous at any rate, because even when I come with these little surprises, my opponents have a lot of time to think. Whereas I think if I were playing 10 or 15 minutes, I actually have a much better score in this event. But it is what it is. So I just look at I try to have some little surprises here or there in various openings and hope they work. But I don't do, it's nowhere near the same level of preparation I do for the classical tournaments that I play in.
That makes sense, I guess. We can look forward to some more surprises then maybe in the Blitz portion. I think for today, that's all on my end. If there's anything you would like to add.
No, yeah, that same. Good luck tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly just try and stay focused and play some good chess. But I think the other problem I've had in this event specifically, and I've had this has started to happen a lot, also like in the SEC against Nepo or against Jan, is that it seems like whenever it's like either I need no time to think or I need like forever to think. But somehow this in between, like my if I have to make moves in like 5-10 seconds, I'm still fine. But if I have to make moves in like 3 minutes, somehow my brain just doesn't work. And if I have 20 minutes to think, then I'm great, obviously, because it's classical chess. So so it's kind of a weird issue that I'm trying to figure out what I can do differently. But that's how it goes. So yeah, that's it.
And finally, before we let you go, chat wants to know, did you see that Jospin, who was here yesterday, the commentary has certainly been lucky because he won the early TT ahead of a certain Magnus Carlsen?
No, I mean, I didn't see that. Usually there's not a lot of time between the games, so I haven't had a chance to look at that. I mean, I haven't had a chance to look at Levy's game or anything else. But obviously I'll make it up as I go in the recap. So no, but that's great to see that that Jose won a title Tuesday. I'm sure someone will be very unhappy about it, but that's life.
Hikaru, thank you so much for your time. We will let you go and best of luck for tomorrow. Catch you then.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, thanks you guys for doing great coverage, and yeah, I'll see everybody tomorrow. So yeah, have a good one, everyone.
See you
Okay.
then. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye. So those were Hikaru's thoughts on day 2. We still have 3 games going. So Alex, let's return to this one, which is barely recognizable. Alireza against Nordivek.
Yeah. What a strange setup here.
This one has changed quite a bit. Let me very quickly, we left it off here, right? And we thought Alireza is winning. And we're not going to have time to analyze everything that happened, but it looks like trade of queens, Alex. I always say it, don't trade queens. That's where things started turning a little bit. It, to me, looks like he just lost the grip over somehow the control of the position, or lost the thread a bit. And anyway, he's now playing this endgame, an exchange down, but he has what, 3 pawns
Yeah.
for the exchange?
White shouldn't be in any trouble. That's a lot of pawns for an exchange. But on the other hand, black has kind of, you know, a very active rook here. Definitely possibilities with the knight. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the rook is very strong in this kind of position. And the pawns, the extra pawns for white, they take a while to advance. So it's kind of balanced. It's hard to predict really who's going to come out on top, but objectively speaking, it's around equal. The rook and the knight, they're just very well placed, right? So for example, something like knight e4, it's hard. How are you bringing your king in? And if white starts to advance the pawns, I think there's maybe a little bit more risk for black, but you know, maybe even a position like this, the bishop is hit. Let's say you move the bishop and you just sit and you wait. It's kind of hard to actually push these pawns. If you start pushing them like this, maybe black blocks them on the dark square. So tricky, very tricky position to analyze and to play. Maybe more chances for black to go wrong than white.
Yeah, I would prefer white, but Nordivik will also be happy, I think, just to have survived the onslaught. But he's down 5 minutes on the clock, which is non-negligible. Non-negligible. Is that
I
the
think
word
so.
I'm looking for?
I think that word exists.
Yeah, so Alireza also, he will feel like he got in this great, probably prep. He got a crushing position. So I think he will try everything he can here. Let's also look at the tournament standings. I mean, with a win, he would actually catch up to the leader Jan Nepomniachtchi, and MVL has already drawn his game. So I don't know if that's the live standings. I think usually Jaren and the team are quite on the ball. So I think a win, if I'm reading everything, all our information correctly, I think with a win, Alireza would join the lead. So it is quite a big game.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think about how this might play out. Like, so Alireza wants to keep on pushing the pawn. This makes sense. But what happens after, say, knight c7 hits this knight? I think if you trade here, there's really not much that you can do as white to try to win, because if you push the pawn, black's king is going to cover it, and the rook is such a powerful piece. It's hard to believe that white will win there. So white has to keep the knights on the board. Maybe do something like this. I don't know. It's such a difficult position to think about. Some kind of position like this, and can white, if white could only get rid of this pawn, then it would be huge. You know, 3 pawns, 3 connected pawns. But black's pawn is sticky, you know, and I don't know. I mean, we could analyze this, but it's such a brutally difficult position. I mean, and we're kind of arriving cold as well. It's like, showing up to this super impossible to understand endgame that is kind of unusual as well. Like, it's not it's not a common one.
And Creamsicles is saying, just updated the standings, whoops. But at the top at least, I don't think much has changed. I think it's still true that with a win, Alireza would catch up to the leaders, Jan and Maxime. And Hikaru currently sits on 5 points. I think, still so much left in this tournament. I think the last game was quite important. And yeah, I thought it was interesting. I think we read the Hikaru situation about game one. I think you had said, that he probably had missed this bishop b5,
Yeah.
and then later in the game we could quite clearly see, I think, that he suddenly realized his mistake. But yeah, Hikaru's games are over for today, but this one's still in full swing. Oh, and we actually missed a few moves here.
Okay, so we're actually getting the position that we were just looking at, where black can play this move c4, or something very similar to what we were looking at, and now king c3. It's easier for black to go wrong, for sure. I mean, so the way in which black could go wrong is something like, say, this, and then this starts to march, the knight starts to come in, and you just keep on advancing. At some point, maybe push this one, or maybe you try to block like this, and suddenly knight b3, king moves, c4, keep marching the pawns. This is the way that black can go wrong. It's very easy for black to go wrong. But on the other hand, h3, yeah, in fact, h3 was played, and black does go wrong with h3.
Wow.
Knight takes c5, check, king moves. And I think what Nolibek was hoping for is that the threat, let's say if you go, I don't know what Nolibek was thinking exactly. Let's say if you go here, maybe he was hoping takes, and take this pawn on f4. And suddenly this one is going to fall, and maybe life is okay.
Very scary with the 3 pawns.
Still looks really scary. But it turns out that here, in this position, white has a beautiful move, knight d3. And that covers not only the f2 square, but also the f4 pawn. So say after take, there is no check, because the knight is blocking it. And there's no rook takes pawn, because the knight would gobble up the rook.
That knight on d3, and knight d3, Alex, is on the board. A big move played by Alireza.
Yeah.
The cleanest way to a win, and 40 seconds. With 40 seconds on the clock, this move could come as a bit of a shocker to Nordibek, who in a losing position, and it's very tough. I mean,
I think it's
how
over.
are you gonna stop this flood of pawns?
Yeah, I don't see Nolibek stopping those 3 pawns. I mean, they do take a little while to move, but not that long. Right? 1, 2, 3, and
when you're the black player, they seem very, very fast.
And the problem for black is, where's the counterplay? Like, where is black's own threat? I mean, this pawn is about to be chopped off for this one, so these are going to come off the board, and maybe black can start to pick up one other pawn. Black could do something like this, but if you win a pawn here, but you lose 2 queens, the maths don't really add up, right? I don't know.
That is fair enough. Alireza very, very close to joining the leaders on 8 points. Let me just see what else has happened in this round. So Levon against Samviel was a draw. We saw the draw between Jan and Hikaru, and Pragnananda lost to Fabi. So is Fabi coming back a bit? Fabi, like Hikaru, on 5 points. And the other game that's still going is Wesley So against Lenier. Maybe we'll have some time to quickly check in there when this one's over, but it looks in the balance. And the action is here, but probably not for much longer, as these pawns are just gonna make a run for it.
Yeah.
You still have to be a bit careful. I mean, this pawn, you don't really want to drop it. You can't push it because the bishop is hanging. I like that the computer's saying, just keep it defended. And what did Alireza plays? King d2. their best move. King takes f5. Is the rook trapped?
I think it is. Goodbye, rook.
Oh my goodness, that's so pretty.
A little cheeky one. No, rook a1 you have to play,
Oh,
but,
you have to
but
play.
then
But
king
then
b2
the
and
pawns are gonna run.
yeah.
King c3 will also do the job.
Yeah. But I like that king c1 and then
But it's now knight here a threat.
You're very sneaky. You really want to hell with those pawns. I just want
But why does it not work? Let's see. What
maybe
if I
knight b5
take
check.
here? Good enough, but not the best. Okay, never mind. Alireza has taken on g5.
Yeah, but
It's always still okay. I would just play king b3, I think,
yeah,
and then use the
king
c
b3,
pawn.
king b2. That's what I think would like king b3 first, then rook a1, king b2,
The king away from
kick
the
the rook
a5.
away, and then maybe and then either advance the pawns or maybe go like bishop to c6 once your king is here, and then run this pawn. There's many different ways to win, and I don't think that Alireza is going to sweat too much to convert this one, because again, where is Black's counterplay? This is the only source, and it's too many moves. So it's just a question of taste as to how you
do it.
This white, yeah.
I think Nordic will try f5 because what else? He's down to 20 seconds again. Wesley is pressing meanwhile in the other game. This one, I'm shocked. Why hasn't Nordic made a...
I wouldn't be shocked if Nordibek resigns here, actually, to be honest.
King f6? Okay, he wants to, I guess, try to run and defend.
Yeah.
On the queen side.
This is when Alireza hits him with Harry, right? Bang.
He is going, I think, for this plan we just talked about, but Harry could still make an appearance. I think this is the kind of position where you just enjoy being white because something would have to go very, very, very seriously wrong for you to mess this. I always enjoy when I can just push my pawns.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my old my like only real serious trainer before, whenever whenever we would play blitz games, if he ever had you in a position where he was like in total control, or like we were playing, say, rapid games, whatever it was, he would always like slow down in those spots and purposefully play like the moves that kind of kept the game going for a bit, just so he could really enjoy like the torture drawn out as long as possible. So yeah, a great guy.
And actually, after a6, Nordebek has seen enough, and he does resign the game, which means Alireza catches up to the leaders, and there's now a three-way tie at the top: Nepomniachtchi, Vachier-Lagrave, and Firouzja. And this is our last game of the day, Alex. A lovely knight game with an extra pawn for Wesley to send us out here.
This is what every chess player dreams of, really, when we're first learning the game. You get to this position. Well, I mean, okay, white is up a pawn, Wesley is up a pawn. What can we say?
Good analysis.
But at the same time, I mean, Black's structure is really, really healthy. And knight and pawn endgames, they say that they're a little bit like king and pawn endgames. If you're up a pawn, it tends to matter a lot, but it's not entirely true. And here, this is one of those exceptions where, in fact, having the knights really changes a lot. If you didn't have the knights and it was just pawns, white had this pawn to distract black, and in the meantime, white could do lots of things on the king side, then we probably would get a white victory. We'd be looking at a pretty straightforward white victory. But here, how does white make progress? You know, this is, again, this is just a wall. So white's king is going nowhere here. And now the pawn is under fire. So I guess white is going to have to exchange.
Yeah.
And how do you actually, you know, if you start running this pawn, if you attempt to do this, black's king is just going to pick it up. Now, if on the other hand, you try to move with your king here, somewhere like here.
Then knight g4 or something.
Exactly. Exactly that. So what is your option? If you move the king, you get hunted here. If you move the pawn, that gets picked off. The only other option that I can see is something like f3. But if you do this,
every trade.
Now, first off, there's less material, but now black has a passed pawn that can also become a protected pawn. So what are you going to do? Now you're tied down to this. So whichever way white turns, there's some problem or another. And I'm not sure how Wesley is going to keep the game alive.
He does try to push the b pawn.
Yeah.
But Lenier is one of the guys, I don't think he plays in Europe that often. So he's one of the top guys I've seen the least. But last year he was playing in this Armageddon event in Berlin. And he really impressed me because the time controls were so short. And the way, you know, he kept his cool under pressure, yeah, was very impressive. So I think he will be able to hold this one without too much trouble. Let's not bring the commentator's curse to life, but I think he's done a great job so far, and he's very close now.
Yeah, I think it's over here. I think he's just, and Lenier is also such a principled player. He's has such good understanding of the game. He's done his homework, and these endgames aren't going to catch him out. And yeah, he liquidates, and it's game over.
That pawn will be captured, that pawn will be pushed, and that pawn will be captured as well. And with only a knight and kings left on the board, that is not enough material to checkmate, so the game ends in a draw. Standings doesn't really change. Well, Lenier now within 2 points behind, 2 points behind the leaders. Will Hikaru come for an interview? Ryan, I have sad news. Unfortunately, you missed Hikaru. He was already here. I was talking about Lenier in Europe, but they both of them played in the tournament. And actually, I think they were the two players with the highest. So Lenier impressed me with how, you know, how calm and how well he kept his cool under pressure. But what shocked me maybe the most, Wesley, so the Armageddon tournament was where they used the heart rate monitors. And for me, Wesley always looked like the calmest of players, and his heart rate was through the roof, like 100, you know, 180. Both Lenier and Wesley had incredibly high heart rates, but they look very calm at the board, which was funny to me. That concludes today's show. Alex, thank you for having been here. It was a lot of fun. Tomorrow, Jose will be back. We are hoping tomorrow, I think, on paper, the best day for Hikaru, two whites playing some of the lower rated players in the tournament. As you can see in the standings, I mean, he's playing Wesley, he's playing Pragnananda, who are currently in the last two places. And finally, he is playing Lenier. And then we move on to the Blitz. So all to play for. I will see you guys tomorrow, same place, same time. And I'll let you.
See you guys sometime in the future, perhaps. You let me what? You let me what, Fiona?
Close it out.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed, even if
great commentary and stories today.
Thank you, Dre Candy 13. Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, so yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, great game, fascinating, great day, fascinating knight and pawn end games. We saw a lot of them. Hopefully, some more knight and pawn end games coming your way tomorrow and all your ways. And yeah, maybe you should close it out.
Yeah, no, maybe a little plug for you, since I think most people who are here for Hikaru probably most have left. If you're interested in positional play, Alex, he's worked on it for over a year, just had his course on positional chess come out on Chessable just yesterday, fresh off the press. So if that's something that might interest you, feel free to take a look. And that's my little plug done.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
The Scotch chorus, of course.
And the Scotch.
And the Scotch.
That's it. We did a Chessable course on the Scotch, the two of us. Yeah, it's a good course if you're ever looking.
And thank you so much, Creamsicles.
Oh, thank you.
Much appreciated. So yeah, that's it from us. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Had a lovely time as always. Have a good one and see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye bye.